This story begins in a captivating world where every person has the power to awaken their beast symbol and summon monsters. Only the Dragon Empire loses its heritage, is subjected to humiliating ridicule, and is nicknamed an alliance of pathetic weaklings. It is difficult to imagine what the inhabitants of this empire have to go through in order to restore their sense of self-worth. The main character, Jonathan, transported to this time, wants to obtain the most powerful mark of the beast. It is this event that activates the Atlas of Summoning from the Chronicle of Mountains and Seas, which is one of the most valuable artifacts. He receives several beasts at his disposal, each of which is highly legendary. Together with them, he turns out to be not some pathetic beast tamer, but a true creator of a new world. Jonathan has been in this world for about 5 years now, and during this time he has managed to gain a large amount of power. Finally, the day comes when he can fulfill his wish with the help of a special stone that came here with him. A huge amount of effort and resources is spent just for this fateful moment. Concentrating all his inner strength, he expresses his desire to awaken the most powerful beast sign possible. 20 minutes before the Great Coming, 2 masters teach students and say that the signs of the beasts are divided into ranks from the highest to the lowest. From their point of view, there are normal, mystical, amber, earthly, heavenly, immortal, and divine ranks of beast power. They assure that the more light crystals that flash during the test, the stronger the rank of the mark of the beast will be. The gray-haired mentor announces that those he calls right now must step forward and enter the circle of awakening. One of the students steps forward, after which the test of his spiritual strength level begins. The enthusiastic neophyte declares that he is ready to go through any difficulties that may arise on his path. However, his talent turns out to be not the highest of all possible, which greatly upsets him. However, the time for the next candidate comes, and the mentor demands that the students hurry. After some time, it is the turn of the legendary eldest daughter of the Jean family, named Josie, who is admired by everyone. Josie reflects on the fact that she has been in Jonathan's shadow for 3 whole years, and it is painful for her. However, today she decides to finally show him who the real genius of the summoning art is. One of the main character's acquaintances suggests that, apparently, the school's most beautiful girl is angry with him again. Jonathan, like a cold-blooded young man, declares that he doesn't care and that he didn't harm her. One of his classmates wonders if Jonathan will be able to guess what rank he will have. Jonathan greets this thought with incredible confidence and asserts that he will achieve the maximum divine rank of power. Frowning, he declares that he simply must get the highest grade, otherwise his whole life will be meaningless. Ordinary people who observe him believe that he is too self-confident and is unlikely to achieve such a rank. They also note that theoretical exams are one thing, but awakening the sign of the beast is something completely different. The arrogant students point out that there are only 10 beast tamers with divine marks in the Dragon Empire. A monster training class instructor named Charlie turns to his colleague and says that Jonathan is a master of conversation. His colleague Skylar reminds everyone that they should remember that this young man is ranked first in the preliminary tests. He suggests that Jonathan might even be able to awaken his divine mark, but Charlie remains doubtful. The thing is that he's already making inquiries and finds out that Jonathan is just an ordinary orphan, and his parents were ordinary people. However, his adopted sister Samantha shocks absolutely everyone by receiving a divine mark. Charlie grins and states that they are not blood-related, so the chance of success is 0. With his nose in the air, he adds that everyone should get ready to see Josie steal the show. Josie takes a few steps towards the defining circle, and Charlie bursts into laughter. People around her notice that she has always been second in the school rankings and wonder what kind of results she will get. Josie demonstrates incredible determination and drive to achieve the highest rank possible. After a few moments, she extends her hand forward, and multicolored sparkles begin to appear next to it. The crystals light up one after another, generating a colossal amount of energy around. In this way, this girl lights up 7 rays of light, proving that she was able to awaken the divine sign. People watching this are surprised and ask themselves if this is true, and the girl managed to awaken the maximum level. Such events are truly rare, and it takes hundreds of years for someone to receive a divine sign. Charlie looks up in surprise and says that something incredible is appearing in the clouds. Looking closer, he realizes that there is a legendary black phoenix spreading its wings, blazing in flames. Skylar screams loudly that this simply cannot be, because no one in the Dragon Empire has summoned a black phoenix for 200 years. The mentor standing next to Josie congratulates her and says that she was able to awaken the divine rank. The fans standing next to her think that she is truly incredible and will definitely get into the Heavenly Dragon Academy now. The professor claims that she is a true genius, and the future of the Dragon Empire rests on gifted people like her. Josie thanks her mentor for his kind words and promises to try to become even stronger. Another professor says it's time for the last man to receive his rank. Jonathan calmly heads towards the distribution circle to achieve the desired result. Josie quietly remarks that this time the victory is hers, and she finally succeeds in the competition. Jonathan says she shouldn't jump to conclusions because he'll get an even better result now. Charlie starts laughing at his colleague and says that he can't wait to see what rank his best student gets. Jonathan steps into the circle, deciding it is time to begin the process of determining his rank. This time, the crystals are behaving in an unusual way, as nothing like this has ever happened in history. People observing what is happening understand that all 12 light crystals have lit up. No one can believe such an outcome because this man is an ordinary poor man and not a gifted fighter. Even proud Josie admits it's impossible, but she's left watching as she's defeated. Stunned people look up at the sky and discover that a huge number of lightning bolts and strange silhouettes are appearing in it. They try to understand where these silhouettes come from, since their appearance remains a mystery, shrouded in darkness. After a while, everything becomes more clear, but no less surprising. A scroll appears in the air, and people say that this should not happen when the mark of the beast awakens. Some brave souls wonder if he really achieved the highest possible estimate of his potential. Jonathan looks up, wondering what's going on, trying to figure out where his mark of the beast has gone. A moment later, a powerful light effect hits him directly in the face, blinding everyone else who looks at him. The main character himself finds himself in an unknown place, and everything that happens next becomes a true miracle. The system informs him that the sign of the beast of the Chronicle of Mountains and Seas has been successfully bound. He is also told that he can now randomly summon creatures from the annals of the mountains and seas. Jonathan looks at the description he received in surprise, trying to understand what it is and how it happened that he was able to unlock this sign. The professor observing this transition claims that this simply cannot happen. His older, more experienced colleague says he finds these results extremely disappointing. After that, he states that Jonathan, who has a maximum level divine rank, has awakened the Trash Scroll Beast Mark. There is an awkward pause, and everyone watching does not even know what words to use to describe what happened. However, after some time, ill-wishers say that this trash sign is quite consistent with Jonathan. Charlie claims that all this noise has led to the most senseless result he has ever seen. He smiled and wondered if this man was really going to hit the monsters over the head with a scroll. Even the very idea of a young man throwing a roll of paper at someone's head seems absurd to him. Everyone starts laughing at Jonathan and saying that he has awakened some dusty waste paper, and for a botanist, this makes perfect sense. Skylar advises her student not to be upset and claims that awakening the mark of the beast is pure luck. Placing a hand on his shoulder, he states that he believes Jonathan's abilities will help him succeed even without a summoned beast. Jonathan thanks his mentor for his kind words and wonders if he can leave to do his own thing. Skylar replies that he didn't have to ask and recommends getting plenty of rest before tomorrow. Jonathan leaves, followed by taunts about how he failed to achieve his goals. It is a world where wormholes appear one after another, bringing chaos and destruction. A week before final exams, all people undergo the awakening of the sign of the beast in order to strengthen themselves as much as possible. Only those who awaken the mark of the beast become true leaders, capable of summoning powerful monsters and controlling them. Only in this way can one resist the nightmares that emerge from the wormholes. In the country of J, the 8-headed serpent Orochi is summoned, who clears the country's territory of all wormholes. The same thing happens in the country of K, where the magic caster summons a vengeful mountain spirit that disperses all forbidden zones. In country M, a mysterious creature named Venom is summoned and begins to take over neighboring countries at an unprecedented rate. The protagonist's homeland loses contact with its ancient heritage, and now tamers cannot summon powerful monsters. The great power of the East is fading away, turning into an object of ridicule for other countries. However, the time comes to rise in spirit, as the protagonist is an incredibly strong young man, ready for anything. Jonathan goes into the woods and commands the system to open a status window so he can inspect himself. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that he is of divine rank, which is the highest among all ranks. He receives information that while the summoned beast is alive, all damage directed at Jonathan will be redirected to the beast. Jonathan realizes that these are incredibly valuable skills and decides to test his talent at the highest level. His first talent is a tenfold increase in the characteristics of the Master and the Beast, which is already active at the first level. Jonathan realizes that thanks to his exceptional talents, which grant him divine powers, he will never know defeat again. The system asks him if he is ready to begin summoning the first beast, and he replies that he has been waiting for this moment his whole life. Moments later, an energy tornado appears, signaling the arrival of the first divine beast. Jonathan watches this with genuine surprise and admits that he has never seen such power. The system congratulates him on obtaining an amazing beast and begins forming his body from pure energy. Moments later, a giant sunset dragon appears in the air, which is an extremely powerful creature. According to the full information, its initial characteristics start from 1,000, which is an incredible success. Jonathan understands that not a single first-level beast, even the most powerful, had a stat higher than 100. Thus, having received the talent of the maximum level, he becomes an invincible hero. Jonathan reaches forward and commands the sunset dragon to obey his powerful and indomitable will. After some time, the action moves to a mysterious temple, in the center of which there are columns and silhouettes of animals. The torches within it quickly flare up, signaling that the meeting of elders is about to begin. Energy begins to penetrate from the spiritual world, and the silhouettes begin to tremble. Someone approaches the elders and reports that an SSS rank sacred beast totem has suddenly appeared in the Temple of Fate. One of the elders, shocked, asks again if he heard correctly, not believing his ears. He is immediately told that such creatures have not appeared in the Dragon Empire for so many years, which means that the lost legacy is returning. Deciding not to rush to conclusions, the elders travel to the Temple of Fate and discover a power unique to SSS rank totems. Thus, the first evidence of a new flourishing of the Dragon Empire appears, as the level of national luck increases by 1,000 points. One of the elders says that people must be sent immediately to search for the one who was able to summon this incredible beast. Meanwhile, Jonathan returns to the academy and discovers that a mysterious portal has appeared there. His comrade asks if he also received the message and suggests that they form a team to act together. Jonathan replies that he has already received the message, but will go into the dungeon exclusively alone. The comrade asks if he is tired of living, clearly upset that his friend refused his offer. The arrogant students watching him say that the Chronicle of Mountains and Seas will not help him in battle, and he will simply die. Laughing heartily, they claim that it is impossible to develop with such a trashy animal sign, and it only makes others laugh. The protagonist's friend explains that he came specifically to help and asks him why he is so confident in himself. Josie remarks that it's hard to look at him without tears, and adds that in that case they can go together. Jonathan replies that there is no point in this, since leveling up with someone will take too long. Josie counters that she has a divine rank mark, so it won't take long to develop with her. However, after a few moments, she realizes that he wants to level up as quickly as possible because he is going to enter the academy. When people hear this, they start laughing and say that to be admitted, you need to reach at least level 10. Josie still proposes a bet, claiming that they will see who can level up faster and come out the winner. Jonathan grins and declares that with his incredible advantages, he will definitely win this competition. Turning towards the portal, he adds that in that case, he will wait for her at the finish line. Josie tries to call after him, but he immediately disappears into the depths of the portal, leaving her alone. Josie doesn't tolerate this kind of treatment and immediately follows him to get to the same location. Finding herself in an unknown place, she calls upon her Black Phoenix to help her. She realizes that her beast is only level 1, but thanks to its rank, it is capable of fighting against opponents of a higher level. As she gets closer to her target, she commands her beast to perform the Phoenix Strike skill. Fiery sparks begin to flash in the air, after which the bird strikes and instantly hits its target. Josie starts chuckling and declares that no one can level up faster than her. Meanwhile, Jonathan, who is a few kilometers away, stumbles upon a pack of wild wolves. He understands that he is facing some of the most dangerous monsters, and if anyone else were here, he would have already been torn to pieces. However, he does have area attacks and a beast that can take damage if needed. With his hand extended, he commands the Sunset Dragon to deliver a swift and decisive attack with its breath. A flash appears in the air again, destroying all animals within the radius of destruction. The system notifies him that he has destroyed several wolves and received a significant amount of experience. Jonathan smiles and notes that with the help of his amazing beast, he can kill any opponent. In addition to his beast, he also levels up himself, increasing his stats to a more acceptable level. Jonathan realizes that the Chronicle of Mountains and Seas gives him 3 slots for beasts at once, and if he could summon another one, farming would go faster. Unfortunately, spiritual energy is restored only at a rate of 10 points per day, and for a full summoning you need to accumulate a full 100. In this case, the Sunset Dragon is forced to fight for everyone, but this does not become a big problem because he is incredibly strong. The powerful, formidable beast creates another fire sphere that destroys the last weak wolves in the area. Then he meets a wild boar, gets some more experience, and then things calm down. However, as is usually the case, silence comes before the storm, and breathing begins to be heard behind him. Jonathan turns around and realizes that standing in front of him is the king of the forest wolves, who is the boss of the 5th level. This monster is significantly stronger and faster than a normal wolf, and also has ferocious skills that make it difficult to fight. Jonathan understands that other fighters would immediately run away when faced with such a creature, as they do not have sufficient skills. However, this monster's misfortune is that he encountered the main character, who is afraid of nothing. Summoning a spirit dragon, he commands the beast to destroy this pitiful threat. However, as soon as one of the projectiles is directed towards the Wolf King, he makes a sharp dash. Jonathan realizes that this is what he expected from the beast known as the Rookie Killer. This enemy is capable of dodging even the attacks of the Sunset Dragon, something not everyone can boast of. Looking at the main character, the wolf becomes more and more furious with each passing second and prepares to launch a powerful attack. A moment later, he rushes forward, but Jonathan doesn't even take a step back, as if it doesn't bother him. With a grin, he orders the Sunset Dragon to perform another sneak attack on his opponent. The dragon decides to use the skill of Deafening Roar to confuse the opponent. This attack also deals a huge amount of damage, but has a small radius of damage. Jonathan defeats the wolf by having it enter the skill's range, ensuring an easy victory. Immediately after this, he receives a trophy in the form of a spiritual energy stone, which dropped for quickly and efficiently killing the boss. Jonathan considers himself incredibly lucky, because this stone is not an ordinary object, but a valuable find. He remembers Skylar's words that this item completely restores spiritual energy. Jonathan realizes that this will allow him to immediately summon another beast, and agrees to use the artifact. The system notifies him about the restoration of the maximum number of spiritual power points. Jonathan smiles and realizes that he will emerge from the dungeon several times stronger. Immediately after this, he activates the beast summoning skill, and his body is enveloped in a mysterious glow. An energy portal opens before him, signaling the appearance of a powerful beast of very high rank. The system notifies him that he has summoned a beast from the annals of mountains and seas, the ancient dragon turtle. Jonathan wonders if all the monsters in this chronicle possess such incredible strength. This creature's stats are inferior to those of a dragon in terms of attack, but it has high endurance. Among other things, the turtle has the skill of provocation, which makes it indispensable in this combination. Jonathan realizes he's unlocked a winning combination, given the Sunset Dragon's area of effect attacks. After some time, the action again moves to the temple, where the elders report on the incredible event that has occurred. They wonder what's going on and try to figure out if something has happened that could surprise them after recent events. They are informed that another sacred totem has appeared in the Temple of Fate, and one of the elders declares that this is impossible. The oldest of the elders asks what rank this totem has. The temple servant reports that this creature is SS ranked, meaning their country's national luck has increased by 500 points. The elders wonder what is going on here, not believing that 2 such totems have already appeared in just 2 days. The temple servant says that, judging by the indicators, these 2 creatures were summoned by the same person who was below level 10. The chief elder states that he cannot believe that all of this happened because of one tamer of such a low level. Meanwhile, Skylar is approached by a woman who asks if his student has entered the beginner's dungeon. People nearby are trying to figure out what this person is doing there because he doesn't have a normal sign. They immediately claim that this trash beast mark is not capable of summoning even weak creatures, and that such a thing is pure suicide. Skylar states that, according to the students, this sign is still capable of summoning the monster, which means that not all is lost. His colleagues begin to laugh at him, suggesting that this is all a figment of his imagination and that he can only summon a scroll on legs, nothing more. Skylar sighs, realizing that it will take a long time to get rid of such ridicule, but decides to move on. After this, he realizes that if his student has set out on this journey, he will not simply back down. After some time, a surprising figure appears, which immediately attracts everyone's attention. Taking a closer look, the people realize that the head of the Monster Tamers Guild had come to see them. This man's name is Miller Jean, and he has come here on a very important matter that brooks no delay. Charlie asks Miller if he came to see what progress his daughter has made. Miller doesn't respond, and soon the portal begins to show signs of violent activity, frightening the people around it. People nearby assume that Josie will come out of there now and surprise everyone with her results. However, to everyone's surprise, it is Jonathan who emerges from the portal first. Skylar asks his student in surprise how it happened that he came out of the portal before everyone else. Jonathan smiles and notes that he himself does not understand this, because he was calmly killing monsters when the system suddenly announced his victory. Jonathan recalls that he had already reached level 5 and wanted to farm level 10 monsters, but he was attacked by the savage chieftain. Charlie states that this is simply impossible, as even the most talented students of previous years spent 2 days on completing the test. A moment later, he is amazed, noting that Jonathan has somehow already risen to level 5 in power. Miller and Skylar watch the student closely, realizing that this can't be true. Charlie asks him if his Mark of the Beast is really just a useless scroll and how he managed to level up to such a high level. Jonathan is a little confused and is already preparing to tell how he received such incredible powers. Charlie coughs loudly and immediately takes the student away, saying that he is probably tired after the dungeon. Coming even closer to him, he declares that he must not tell anyone about his summoned beast. Jonathan quietly thanks his mentor for the advice and notes that he will no longer talk about his powers. Miller reflects on the fact that in recent years, the only person to clear the beginner dungeon on the first day was Samantha Bean. He also remembers that she left only 2 minutes before the end of the dungeon, and Jonathan finished an hour earlier, which is beyond reasonable limits. After some time, Josie also emerges from the dungeon, having managed to reach the 4th level in one clearing. One of the summoners notes that she has a good beast, but even after a whole day, it itself has only risen to level 2. Josie looks around, and Miller asks her daughter what she's looking for. Josie quickly approaches her father and asks if he has seen Jonathan, with whom she made a bet. Miller replies that this young man completed the dungeon an hour before everyone else, reached the 5th level of power, and has already left. Josie is shocked to hear this and can't believe that it's even possible. Meanwhile, Jonathan heads to the next portal to test his strength in a new dungeon. He notes that there are only 5 days left until the entrance exams, so he needs to level up to at least level 7. A girl appears next to him and asks if he can support her in leveling up. Another girl also states that she doesn't even have a boyfriend who could help her level up. Jonathan immediately leaves them, noting that he is not interested, and they quietly curse him. Jonathan realizes that he doesn't have time to waste on such nonsense now. Looking around, he realizes that this time he was thrown into a different place, but he can't do anything about it. There are too many monsters here, but it gives him a chance to test what else his dragon turtle is capable of. Without thinking twice, he activates the ability to summon a beast, and 2 companions immediately rise to his side. Turning his attention to the monsters, he orders the dragon turtle to use its provocation skill to attract their attention. Immediately after this, the sunset dragon rushes forward and destroys the wild foxes and poisonous snakes, giving the protagonist a lot of experience. Jonathan smiles as he looks at these results, realizing that his farming is now becoming much faster and more efficient. The beasts are leveled up thanks to his talent, but the beginner dungeons are no longer enough for him to become stronger. Suddenly, the system notifies him that he is destroying a mutated level 10 black bear. Such a kill will grant him the Soul Shelter skill book, as well as the Soul Rip skill, which he can now learn. Having carefully studied these possibilities, he realizes that he can now fight even without the participation of his beasts. After a while, his body is once again enveloped in a soft, bright light, and the system informs him that he is mastering this skill. At that very moment, a giant warrior appears behind him, holding surprisingly tiny hammers in his hands. Jonathan perceives this frightening monster only as a target for his own tests and is not at all afraid of it. Taking a few steps forward, he activates the Destroyer Rupture skill to test its effectiveness. It is worth noting that such a blow is incredibly deadly and instantly kills the enemy. All that remains of the giant barbarian is a mutilated body that looks completely lifeless. The system notifies him that he has completed the dungeon, and Jonathan is surprised that it only took him 1 hit. Skylar watches as his charge makes his way through the dungeon alone at incredible speed. Skylar asks him why he left so early, since he still had 2 hours to level up. Jonathan laughs and explains that he accidentally destroyed the boss, so the system itself kicked him out of here. People wonder if he's making fun of them, suggesting that he's deliberately inflating his skills. Skylar immediately becomes more good-natured and notes that in that case they will see him tomorrow. Jonathan stops him, saying that tomorrow he would like to go to the Spider Hole dungeon. Skylar is very surprised by such a desire and asks if he is seriously planning to go there. He also adds that there are no protective barriers there and it is a completely wild dungeon, meaning the risk is indeed higher. They try to dissuade him from taking unnecessary risks, advising him to at least enroll in a regular university, but someone points out that such institutions don't interest him. With determination, he declares that his true goal is the Heavenly Dragon Academy, which he intends to enter. He also notes that in order to pass the selection, he needs to reach level 10 as soon as possible. Skylar looks at his student carefully, understanding the seriousness with which he approaches this issue. Taking a deep breath, he admits that if a decision has already been made, then stopping it would be pointless and even harmful. At the same time, he asks only one thing, that Jonathan promise to behave with extreme caution. Jonathan looks responsibly to his mentor and says that he will not be a hero or expose himself to unnecessary risk. Josie, meanwhile, also finishes clearing the dungeon and appears in this world, looking around. Charlie immediately comes closer to her and notes that she is leaving much earlier today, which means she is making progress. Josie, curious about the results of the competition, wonders where Jonathan has gone. Charlie, with obvious reluctance, replies that Jonathan left about an hour ago and has already reached level 7 after clearing the dungeon. Josie reacts to this information with irritation, realizing that once again she is being left behind her opponent. She reflects with irritation on how she risked her life for the 6th level, but was passed over again. However, she does not lose heart and says that next time she will definitely surpass him in all respects. Charlie notes that Jonathan doesn't appear to be returning tomorrow as he's heading to the Spider Hole dungeon. Josie is very surprised to hear this, because this is a 12th level dungeon, which will be difficult even for gifted students. Immediately after this, she turns to her mentor and asks for permission to go there in order to level up. Meanwhile, the action moves to a place where there is a portal to that very spider dungeon of increased difficulty. Jonathan prepares to take on this challenge, knowing that even with 2 animals, it will be extremely difficult. After some time, he meets a building employee on his way who asks how she can help him. Jonathan opens a small portal and asks her if she buys items dropped in dungeons. Immediately after this, he hands her everything he has, saying that he wants to sell it all and buy a stone of spiritual energy. Jonathan smiles nervously and notes that his wish should come true as quickly as possible. Afterwards, she hands him a small stone of spiritual energy, and he asks if he is entitled to change. The employee explains that all the products he provided are suitable only for beginners, so their prices are extremely low. Jonathan feels incredibly insulted, but he can't do anything about it, because beginner dungeons don't generate much money. However, he is depressed by the fact that he spends 2 days of endless farming and still ends up without a single coin. The employee says that if he wants to earn some extra money, he can go to the Seekers Guild and take a quest. Jonathan thanks her for her advice, realizing that he will now be able to improve his financial situation. Only a few dozen minutes pass, and he already finds himself in the guild, wondering why quests in guilds are so difficult. After some time, he finally catches sight of a certain quest that might interest his attention. This quest is very difficult, but the reward for it is a beast evolution stone, so he immediately accepts it. Jonathan reflects on the fact that in order to complete this dungeon, he needs to summon another beast as soon as possible. Once outside, he takes out a spirit stone from his inventory and decides to use it immediately. By concentrating his spiritual energy, he commands the system to summon another spiritual beast to strengthen himself. The air begins to be cut by a pulsating energy, which soon forms a small portal. Jonathan watches the proceedings, genuinely curious to see who will show up this time. The energy flame begins to rage, and he sees the strange silhouette of a beast approaching him. Meanwhile, the spiritual temple, where the columns of animals had been located all this time, begins to move. All the silhouettes of animals that were on the pedestals suddenly begin to reach out to something more powerful. The elder wonders what is happening, assuming that a new totem beast will appear now. One of them claims that this is the 3rd time in a row that this has happened, and that nothing like this has happened in the 1,000 years of the temple's existence. Looking at the energy flickering, they realize that the new totem is located even higher than the Sunset Dragons. National luck increases by 1,500, and the elders realize that the heavens are on their side and the empire will rise again. Using his incredible talents, Jonathan summons a new beast named Xingtian, which is a mythological character. Jonathan understands that this beast is not called the god of war for nothing, because its initial characteristics are higher than those of the Sunset Dragon. Jonathan is delighted to be in possession of the greatest treasure in history and the true legacy of antiquity. Xingtian proudly raises his axe up as Jonathan bursts into loud laughter. The elders wonder what is already known about this summoned beast, looking at Xingtian. His colleague replies that analysts have just confirmed that it is a top-tier beast, and that it was summoned by the same Tamer. One of them says that this simply cannot be, and orders that this person be found at any cost. They tell him that they checked all the students who had awakened high-ranking beasts, but did not find anyone suitable. After this, he comes to the conclusion that they will probably have to wait until the exam in 3 days, and only then will they find out who it really is. The action now moves to the portal that leads to the Spider Holes dungeon. Different people are trying to find suitable groups for themselves in order to make it easier for them to level up in the dungeon. Upon seeing the main character, they immediately wonder what he's doing here, since he's only level 7. One of the girls approaches the main character and asks him if he is lost, offering to take him home. Jonathan walks past her, saying that he is okay and knows where he is going. A more experienced summoner says that it is better not to go there, because he is unlikely to leave alive if he goes there alone. Jonathan learns that there is a potential disaster there, which means he can get his hands on some good artifacts. The young man explains to him that disaster is a monster that must be dealt with immediately, otherwise death will become the least of his problems. He also adds that this could damage the state's national fortune, which is a problem of a completely different scale. Jonathan thanks him for the warning and states that he came here specifically to deal with these disasters. After this, he approaches the dungeon and selects the maximum difficulty level in order to receive the required items. The summoners watching him understand that a terrible death awaits him if he does not change his mind and retreat. Retreat is definitely not Jonathan's thing, so he moves forward to meet his incredible destiny. However, as soon as he appears in the dungeon, a rather formidable monster in the form of a warrior spider appears before him. Jonathan analyzes this monster, realizing that even the ordinary opponents here are at an elite level. To deal with this enemy, he orders the dragon turtle to use provocation. The turtle carries out his command flawlessly, after which it is the Sunset Dragon's turn to attack. Thus, the elite spider warrior of the 12th level is defeated, and the protagonist receives a long sword at his disposal. Jonathan realizes that thanks to the new summoned monsters and the tenfold increase in strength, he can handle anything. After an hour of intense farming, Jonathan gains a huge amount of experience, but still doesn't encounter any of the disasters he's looking for. Suddenly, a strange spider appears on his path, which looks stronger than the others. Jonathan turns around in surprise, realizing that the very same monster of disaster is finally appearing before him. The system shows him the incredible characteristics of this monster, but the protagonist is not discouraged, because he is no pushover either. Jonathan summons all of his beasts to instantly attack him, but they do not deal lethal damage. Jonathan realizes that even with such an advantage in animal numbers, things are not going well for him, which means the situation is getting tense. He also remembers his incredible skill, which ignores any defense and instantly deals pure damage. Taking careful aim, he quickly releases a bolt of destructive energy, hitting the spider's body directly. However, even this damage is not enough to disable such a monster. Jonathan realizes with horror that this monster is now targeting him, which means he will have to react immediately. The spider also quickly takes aim and fires a poisonous needle straight from its sharp and deadly mouth. This needle develops incredible speed, and the main character does not have time to dodge such a projectile. However, as soon as a powerful bone blade pierces his body, a small energy sphere appears around him. Jonathan looks down at his body in surprise and finds that it remains untouched, despite the fact that the wound should have been serious. Looking up, he realizes that due to the peculiarities of the Chronicle of Mountains and Seas, all the damage was redirected to the turtle. However, this is not the biggest reason for joy, since even with such protection, he will not be able to hold out for long. He decides not to drag out this fight and shoots the spider with a soul rupture again. He also calls on his Sunset Dragon to perform a fire-breathing skill. The giant creature rises up and covers the spider with a shaft of fire descending from the sky. The attack is effective and instantly sets the giant spider on fire, leaving the hero in an advantageous position. Jonathan exhales tensely, wondering if he's really succeeded, when suddenly the system informs him that he's completed the task. By defeating a level 13 poisonous spider, he receives 8,000 experience, as well as the long-awaited Heart of Calamity and a couple of other items. Jonathan gains several skills that not only increase his spirit points, but also enhance his abilities. He also receives a spider mask, which gives him the ability to become invisible for a period of time. This kind of equipment is simply ideal for ambushes and retreats, so you should take it without even thinking about it. His thoughts are interrupted by the cry of a dragon turtle, who is currently going through some tough times. Jonathan immediately turns towards her, realizing that she needs medical treatment. After gently stroking her, he calls her back to his world so that she can recover and rest. Jonathan realizes that he should have acted more decisively and that the blame for the turtle's suffering lies with him. This means that he needs to find a way to increase his own stamina and agility as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, other people gather around the dungeon, saying that it is more dangerous than it seems. One of the fighters underestimates these opponents and ends up having to flee, escaping only by some miracle. Jonathan emerges from the dungeon, and the commoners discover that he has already leveled up 2 levels, somehow surviving on the hardest difficulty. They assume that he simply has a very strong beast, but even that seems unlikely, since a low-ranking beast would not survive there. Nevertheless, the protagonist completes the task, which required finding the Heart of Disaster and bringing it to the guild. The system notifies him that the reward for completing the task has been sent and recommends checking his inventory. Jonathan reflects that with such enhancements, his beasts will be unstoppable, which means it was all worth it. However, first you need to sell the items that dropped in the dungeon, and only then start strengthening your animals. Without thinking twice, he returns to the building where he can sell all the junk and unnecessary items. Jonathan is in such a hurry to get into the building that he doesn't notice the girl next to him and knocks her down with his shoulder. The girl loses her balance and quickly falls to the ground, creating a small cloud of dust around herself. She, angry, advises him to watch where he is going. Jonathan immediately apologizes to her, saying that he was in a hurry and did not notice her. Having risen to her feet, the girl says that he did this on purpose in order to touch her. Jonathan claims that this is absolutely not true. He just wanted to sell the things from the dungeon as quickly as possible. The girl falls silent for a moment, thinking that this boy is only level 9 and is unlikely to have anything valuable. However, after a few moments, she discovers a long spider sword and realizes that the boy has some valuables. Immediately after this, she changes and says that he is wasting his time, and it would be better if he sold all the things to her. Jonathan replies that they are seeing each other for the first time, so he has no reason to trust her. The girl asks him if he has ever heard of the Fairy Guild, which has gained considerable popularity. After that, she introduces herself and says that her name is Selena, and she is responsible for purchasing equipment and materials for people. Smiling, she adds that she definitely won't upset him with her prices and swears on the name of her own guild. Jonathan thinks about it and realizes that the market prices are rock bottom right now, so selling these things to her would be much more profitable. Smiling, he declares that he has some more rare equipment, offering to take it all at once. Selena is delighted and expresses a sincere desire to see what goods he has in his inventory. As soon as she sees the protagonist's inventory, she's surprised to note that it is equipment that only drops from the Calamity Boss. Jonathan immediately comes closer to her and covers her mouth with his hand, telling her not to be loud. Looking around suspiciously, he explains that there are too many people here, and therefore it is not worth attracting attention. Selena smiles and says that in this case he is right, expressing the hope that he did not steal all these valuables. Jonathan swears that he knocked out all these things himself, and then asks her whether she's buying them or not. Selena smirks and declares that in that case she will buy back everything he has. Putting on a sweet face, she notes that she couldn't believe that this young man would not only be handsome, but also so strong. After this, she adds that if he is so special, then she would like to make him a special offer. Jonathan looks at her carefully and tries to understand what this girl's plan is. Selena claims that there is a secret dungeon in the south called the Goblin Mine, and she needs the skull of the Goblin King from there. Coming closer, she notes that if he gets this skull, she can marry him as a sign of gratitude. Jonathan states that he is very surprised by this arrangement, but is not one to fall for something like that. Lost in his thoughts, he realizes that in these times, guys should also take care of themselves for the sake of the princess on a white horse. Selena claims that this skull is quite expensive, which means he will definitely not regret the money spent. Jonathan says that he himself wanted to go to a more difficult dungeon, so such a task would be very useful for him. Selena runs off to do her own thing, noting that in that case she will eagerly await good news from him. Jonathan happily realizes that he managed to sell all the equipment and materials, ensuring a comfortable existence for himself for some time. He decides to find a secluded place in order to increase the rank of his beasts and further improve his strength indicators. A mysterious figure watches the protagonist, amazed that he has achieved so much while still only at level 9. Meanwhile, Jonathan initiates the evolution process in order to upgrade his Shinchan to the next level. The beast receives incredible boosts to its stats, causing its body to pulse with energy discharges. The summoned beast's development is complete, and it now becomes a 2-star beast, meaning its stats are significantly increased. Jonathan discovers that this beast can destroy any opponent with one blow with a small chance. After some time, he heads to the place that was indicated to him, looking around in search of robbers. The area turns out to be safe, and Jonathan realizes that he managed to reach the cave without consequences. After some time, he finds a portal that cuts the fabric of space and time in the right place. Jonathan teleports into a dungeon that at first glance doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary. However, almost immediately he detects strange noises and realizes that numerous enemies are approaching him. It turns out that a randomly generated dungeon throws him an instant ambush from a whole squad of goblins. Jonathan understands that this is even beneficial, since he won't have to spend a long time looking for where to farm experience. Jonathan decides not to waste a second, preparing to summon his beasts and unleash their full might on the enemies. However, before doing so, he decides to analyze the goblins, noting that their characteristics are significantly higher than what he has encountered before. However, the main character is no longer as weak as he was yesterday, since he now has pumped-up animals on his side. Looking at the goblins, he decides to try out the pumped-up Shintan and sends only him into battle. The giant breaks free and heads towards the goblins, who are patiently awaiting their fate. Swinging his axe, he lunges forward, causing a small energy explosion near him. Jonathan receives notification that the advanced level 14 goblin mage has been defeated. Jonathan is pleased that after reaching the second level, Shinchan has become not only stronger but also more agile. The headless giant easily dispatches all the goblins, providing Jonathan with an easy way to level up. A dragon turtle suddenly appears next to him and begins to scream indignantly about not being used in battle. Jonathan looks at her with a smile, saying that her turn will come too, and he will not let her get bored with nothing to do. Suddenly, a loud sound of steel weapons clashing is heard in the air, and the goblin blocks the giant's blow. Jonathan and Shinchan wonder what the hell is going on, not believing that the attack could have been blocked. However, there is no doubt, since such a small creature was not smeared into a bloody pulp, but is still standing on its feet and smiling. Jonathan decides to analyze this goblin, seeing that in front of him is a goblin general of the chieftain rank. This creature can reduce damage taken, but Shintan responds to this by activating the Blood Rage skill. Now he significantly increases his combat capabilities and plunges the blade of his axe straight into the goblin's body. The goblin general is defeated, and Jonathan receives the general's armor to help him fight more comfortably. Jonathan notes that he was just about to save up for armor, but now there is no need for that, and all that remains is to level up. In order to achieve his goals, he immediately turns to the dragon turtle and orders it to use its provocation skill. The turtle nods quickly before rushing forward and provoking all the goblins nearby. She lets out a loud scream that echoes throughout the cave, luring the pathetic monsters to her side. After a few minutes, the impenetrable darkness of the cave corridors begins to shine with the reflections of the green eyes of the approaching goblins. Jonathan turns to his other two beasts and orders them to rush forward to crush these opponents into dust. After 3 hours, only a meager number of goblins remain, which will be easily destroyed later. Jonathan receives a huge number of notifications about killed goblins, as well as a considerable amount of experience. Thanks to this massacre, he levels up to level 10, but this also entails a strengthening of his beasts. Jonathan realizes that it is time to target the Goblin King and discuss important matters. These wanderings take about 10 minutes, since the caves really turn out to be quite large. However, after some time, a giant creature, not inferior in size to Shintan, appears in front of him. Jonathan decides to analyze this enemy and discovers that its stats are even stronger than those of the Calamity Spider. The Goblin King is also not wasting any time and is preparing for a powerful energy attack. Jonathan, realizing he needs to hurry, decides to activate the Life Shield skill to prevent serious damage. Within moments, his entire body is enveloped in an incredibly strong protective barrier that neutralizes all damage. However, the Goblin King deals not so much physical damage as mental damage, against which such barriers are meaningless. Jonathan grits his teeth in incredible pain, realizing that he was almost slammed into the wall from such a roar. In order to stop this powerful attack, he orders his beast to rush into battle and destroy this enemy. He warns them that this goblin is much stronger than any opponent they have fought before. He advises them to work together and attack on the signal, but Sintan rushes forward alone. Jonathan watches the scene with his animals, trying to understand why Sintan did what he did. The giant rushes forward, hoping that his instant kill skill will work this time. Powerful blows cut through the air, and it becomes clear that this time he is really lucky, and the boss is destroyed instantly. Jonathan looks at the results of his beast's attack and realizes that he actually managed to kill the boss with one hit. The system notifies him that he has received the spiritual energy stone, as well as the Goblin King's skull and crown. Jonathan realizes that the chance of it working was extremely low, and after something like that, he should have gone to the casino. Carefully bending down, he picks up the Goblin King's head as proof of his victory. Jonathan realizes that the most important thing is that he now has this skull, and all that remains is to return to Selena. The rest of the walk turns out to be quite easy and passes without any serious adventures. However, the real adventure begins when he leaves the cave and meets several people heading his way. Jonathan doesn't understand what all this means at first and tries to figure out why there are so many people in front of the entrance to the dungeon. It turns out that one of the observers from yesterday saw Jonathan clear the dungeon alone and called his bandit friends. Taking a closer look, he realizes that they are wearing some kind of badges, which means they belong to a guild. Jonathan looks at these people and asks them why they came to him and what they want from him. They grin and reply that they have been waiting for him all day, and state that if he does not want trouble, he must give him the Goblin King's skull. They also note that they also liked his artifacts, and add that he is unlikely to get them back anytime soon. Jonathan asks them what will happen if he refuses such a not very tempting offer. The criminals tell him that if he says anything like that again, they will simply shoot him in the head. Jonathan tries to calm down and understands that he first needs to get more information out of them and then act. After this, he shows the skull of the Goblin King and notes that if they came here for money, then he will give them this skull. One of the fighters, waving his hand, declares that at first he thought he was brave, but he turned out to be a simple wimp. Another opponent says that if he were to get a crossbow, he would immediately lose heart and stop acting tough. The bandit leader notes that this boy has finally found himself in such a situation and demands the artifact. Jonathan looks at him in surprise and says that he doesn't have any artifact and that he came here empty-handed. The bandit leader orders him to stop fooling around, stating that the Black Shark Guild is not made up entirely of idiots. Jonathan understands that he is dealing with that very same Frost Guild, which means that he cannot let them leave here alive. Without thinking twice, he turns to his inventory to retrieve items for the upcoming battle. Grabbing a beautiful knife, he declares that they will not get the artifact only if they survive at least a few minutes against him. He decides to use the mask and disappears right before the eyes of these robbers. They wonder where he is when suddenly he appears behind the leader, taking him by surprise. Jonathan manages to grab him and put a knife to his throat, after which he instantly deals a fatal blow without standing on ceremony with the villain. The shocked bandits watch as their leader falls dead, not believing that he was killed so easily. One of them shouts that they must immediately call upon their beasts to take revenge on this bastard for the death of their brother. They are still in the majority, so they have every chance of destroying him. But this is just their illusion. However, they decide to call upon their beasts, which, despite their formidability, do not pose a serious threat. One of the robbers declares that they have so many animals that if each of them pecks his side, he will choke. Jonathan states that he is not impressed by such a threat, after which he summons his dragon to destroy these villains. The bandits stare at the giant beast with their mouths open in surprise, realizing that something like this was impossible to predict. Realizing that the battle would quickly turn into a bloody massacre, they claim that there was a misunderstanding. Jonathan asks them if they really think he would believe such nonsense. He states that the Black Sharks Guild has long been known for its bad reputation, which means he will destroy them. The criminals beg for mercy, but Sintian rushes into battle, dealing blow after blow. No one has a single chance to survive, since it is impossible to escape from this giant. Jonathan takes 5 seconds to realize he's just killed a man for the first time and then moves on. In the evening, he reaches his home, reflecting on what happened during the day and what rewards he received. He remembers Selena throwing herself into his arms and telling him she would kiss him for completing the task so quickly. Jonathan reflects on the fact that he received a whole bunch of resources in exchange for the Goblin King's head, and now he just needs to wait for the exam to start. Suddenly, he hears strange sounds, as if someone is rapidly approaching him. Jonathan turns around in fear and grabs the hand of the man who decided to come closer to him in order to prevent the unacceptable. Josie indignantly asks what the hell is going on and tries to break free from his hand. Jonathan looks at her in surprise and asks what she is doing here at such a late hour. Jonathan explains that she simply came closer to him, and he acted too nervously, as if he had done something wrong. She also demands that he let her go, stating that she is in a lot of pain, and Jonathan quickly apologizes to her. After this, he decides to change the subject of the conversation and asks her why she was looking for him, assuming that something happened. Josie claims she went to the hole to meet him, but he was no longer there. Jonathan explains that he already went to another dungeon today and reached level 10 in power after completing it. Josie reacts to this strongly because it is an incredible shock for her, because she is constantly trying to keep up with him. She starts shaking with rage and says that he could have at least thought about others for once and not hit her self-esteem so hard. Jonathan notes that he was simply lucky and adds that she is also very talented and has a great future. Josie demands that he stop flattering her, adding that tomorrow they will go through the dungeon together, otherwise she will not be accepted into the academy. Jonathan asks her why she wants him to take her with him, since she can finish level 10 herself with her talent. Josie states that she doesn't care about these lies because he is obliged to help her. Jonathan understands that he won't be able to get away from such a clingy girl, so it's better to fulfill her request. He says that tomorrow they should meet at the entrance to the spider hole to clean it out together. Instead of taking action, he is transported to a portal near the dungeon the very next day. One of the summoners pushes aside all the other people, telling them to get out of the way and let him pass. Jonathan notices carefully that this man has the same badge as the guys he finished off. Josie says that he better get away from here, but Jonathan asks her why she's so sure of this. Josie says her dad told her that Shark ran into someone yesterday that wasn't to be messed with. Jonathan asks her what she means, and Josie states that yesterday several black shark handlers disappeared without a trace. She adds that, according to rumors, only badges were left at the scene of the crime, if we are talking about a brutal massacre. Jonathan wonders if it has been possible to find out who committed this terrible and unacceptable crime. Josie says that the guild has crossed a lot of people, so they have a lot of enemies and they will never know the whole truth. However, she notes that she does not feel a drop of sympathy for these people and is even glad about what happened. Jonathan lets out a sigh of relief, knowing that no one seems to suspect him, meaning he's safe. Josie wonders who dealt with those thugs, adding that whoever it was is a hero. Jonathan chuckles and tells her that it's nothing special, so she doesn't have to praise the man so much. Josie slaps him sharply on the head, telling him not to dare belittle her idol, whom she now admires. Jonathan agrees with her, noting that her idols are real heroes and, moreover, probably very handsome young men. Suddenly, a school friend approaches him and asks if he really invited the most beautiful girl on a date. He also wonders why they became close if before they were always arguing and couldn't stand each other. Jonathan explains that there is no need to make anything up, because she, like him, simply asked for help in leveling up. Josie looks at the protagonist angrily and asks if he really invited this one too. Jonathan tells his friend that these are all trifles and that it's time for them to go to the dungeon so as not to waste a second. His friend beams with happiness, confirming that he understands everything, and then makes an approving gesture. By the maximum difficulty level, he scares his friends, who did not expect that they would immediately go to the most difficult test. Jonathan advises them not to worry, promising that as long as he is with them, everything will be fine. After a while, they move forward and the portal absorbs them, sucking them into dangerous areas of the reinforced dungeon. As soon as they materialize in this world, a large number of pumped-up spiders come out to meet them. Josie reflects that it is indeed a terrifyingly difficult and impressive task, but she's still not afraid of challenges. She summons the Black Phoenix and the Emperor Crocodile, both of whom have already leveled up as her beasts. She urges her beasts forward, joyfully commanding them to show these insects what they are truly capable of. Jonathan's friend Jeff notes that this girl is considered the queen of the school for a reason, since she summoned such a crocodile. Meanwhile, the phoenix continues to fly through the air, illuminating everything with its light and scattering rays of fire. Suddenly, a monster called a spider appears from the darkness, possessing outstanding health and damage indicators. Jeff turns to his wolf cub in fear and asks if he can handle a level 13 elite spider. His low-level wolf cub begins to whine in fear, and Jonathan announces that he will go first. He turns to his Jingtian, who is already looking forward to a glorious battle. He also commands the dragon turtle to use its provocation skill while the dragon destroys the small fry. The animals rush forward to obey his commands. Jeff and Josie watch in amazement at the animals Jonathan commands and how he controls them. The sky dragon continues to rain down fireballs on the spiders, while Xingtian brutally crushes them. In just a few swings, he takes out the main enemy and cuts off his head without any problems. Jeff asks if he's imagining it all and is surprised that Jonathan was able to summon all of these creatures at once. Josie realizes that Jonathan has once again gotten the better of her on this issue and is genuinely envious. Jonathan claims to have 3 beasts, one of which is of the highest rank and the other 2 are loyal. Josie can't believe it and assumes that he just found some codes for his own life. Jeff remembers that the mentors called the Mark of the Beast useless and tries to figure out how to learn to summon these creatures. Jonathan explains that if his Mark of the Beast were truly ordinary, then the words of the mentors would be true. But he is the chosen one. He just keeps it a secret, and Jeff swears on his right hand that he won't tell anyone about it. Having dealt with entire hordes of monsters, they decide to continue and head off in search of new adventures. After some time, they come across an American monster, which turns out to be even stronger than the previous one. However, his fate is also sealed, as nothing can compare to Jonathan's beasts. Immediately after this, they continue on their way, crushing everyone left and right, receiving tons of experience. Jeff notes that Jonathan's beasts are so powerful that even the spiders open all their eyes in fear. Josie, meanwhile, levels up and finally reaches the long-awaited mark. She is happy that the milestone has been passed, and now the Heavenly Dragon Academy is in her pocket. Jonathan remarks with resentment that it would be nice if she at least treated him to lunch as a thank you. Josie asks him to stop sulking, stating that she definitely won't be upset with him after what he did for her. After some time, they finish their journey through the dungeon and emerge through the portal under the cover of night. Jeff says he never thought he would make it to level 7, and now even his father will be proud of him. Jonathan discovers that he has only leveled up 1 level, as gaining experience has become much more difficult after level 10. Josie grabs his hand, saying she doesn't like being in debt, and encourages them to follow her. After this, she turns to Jeff and firmly says that she will warn him immediately if he does not go with them. After some time, the exam begins and is moved to the location where the general testing is taking place. Charlie looks at his protege, happy that she has already reached level 10, and praises her for her achievements. He also asks his colleague where Jonathan went after he went into the spider hole with his rare beast mark. Jonathan approaches one of the mentors and informs him that he will have to disappoint him. Skylar immediately looks at the student and is surprised that he has an 11th level of spellcaster power. Charlie remarks that this simply can't be true, since he couldn't have leveled up so quickly with such a seemingly useless sign. Jonathan is adamant that there is a way out of every situation, and he's certainly found it. After this, he asks the mentor for forgiveness, explaining that he woke up late and that is why he was late. Skylar says that it's not a big deal because he's worked hard these past few days and he needs to know how to rest too. Skylar realizes that this guy is all about being number 1, and he beats Josie again, reaching level 11. After this, Jonathan turns to Charlie and asks what he thinks about it now, but he quickly leaves, snorting something about an exam. After some time, important government figures appear, who manage to levitate in the air using their powers. Jonathan observes that such abilities are only available to level 80 Tamers after the 3rd evolution. He also promises himself that he will someday reach similar heights, no matter what it costs him. Meanwhile, the Tamers land down below, carefully watching the regents who want to pass the exam. One of them, a tall man, tells the students that he will be their examiner, and his name is Mo. The students listen carefully to his words about cheating being punishable by expulsion and confirm that they understand him. Mo explains that the exam consists of 3 stages, the first of which is a test of strength and spirit. According to the rules, students will be placed in a space where 2 statues will be installed and they will have to break them. The student asks what will happen if they destroy the statues, and Mo states that they don't have to worry about that. He adds that all these statues are quite strong creatures, after which he declares the exam open. Jonathan teleports into a special space along with the rest of the students and waits for the enemy to appear. After a few moments, the air in front of him begins to move, and energy clots form in it. A few moments later, 2 giant statues materialize out of thin air and look at him with a nasty smile. Jonathan immediately turns on the enemy analysis system, realizing that he has a lot of health and high resistance to damage. He understands that Xingtian would be ideal for dealing with such large and strong opponents. Summoning this impressive monster, he commands it to activate all its skills and attack with full force. At Jonathan's command, Shinchan activates a blood frenzy state, significantly increasing his damage. The great hero from ancient legends also lets out a menacing roar to break the resistance of his opponents. He charges forward, dealing a mind-boggling 60,000 damage, overcoming most of his opponent's defenses. The statues do nothing in response because that is their programming, and this allows him to unleash his attack on them again. Jonathan understands that if things continue like this, his victory in the exam is guaranteed. Sintan continues to unleash incredible power from his axe on his opponents. The last statue breaks into pieces, and the main character is awarded a large number of points for the enemy's health. Meanwhile, one of the judges turns to Mr. Miller, noting that his daughter is truly smart and heaven's chosen one. Miller asks him not to exaggerate his daughter's achievements and adds that the real star is Jonathan, who summoned 3 SS-rank beasts at once. Mo declares that the appearance of such a tamer is a true blessing for the entire Dragon Empire, as well as a great omen. After some time, the portal begins to activate, and the judges notice with surprise that someone is coming out of it. Upon closer inspection, they discover that Jonathan has already completed his test with incredible results. Miller looks at him in surprise, noting that only 5 minutes have passed since his tests began. Mo wants to achieve the most fair result and suggests checking the system logs for any failures. Jonathan turns to the judges with a determined expression and announces that he has completed the first part of the exam. Mo looks at him in shock and asks what he means, expressing disbelief that Jonathan completed the task. Jonathan shrugs and explains that he merely destroyed both golems that were there. One of the judges notes that these exam statues have 90% protection, meaning Jonathan definitely used prohibited items. Jonathan claims he did nothing wrong and recommends checking the system logs to confirm this. The examiner begins to be cheeky to Jonathan, saying that he now faces expulsion since he dared to order him around. Meanwhile, a member of the judging committee explains that the results have been received, adding that Jonathan did indeed destroy the statues. He also adds that according to system reports, Jonathan did not use any prohibited items, which surprises everyone. Mo looks at Jonathan and admits that he didn't expect a new genius to appear in the city since he managed to cope so quickly. Miller immediately approaches him and wonders if this is the man who is his daughter's classmate. Jonathan confirms that this is indeed the case, and Miller chuckles, stating that his daughter told him about him, and now he understands why. One of the examiners notes that one cannot turn a blind eye to possible cheating and suggests that Jonathan definitely cheated. Jonathan states that if an examiner has doubts, he must present evidence, otherwise it is simply slander. An impudent examiner named Victor says that for such words he will deal with him and kick him out of here. Mo immediately orders him to shut up, realizing that with such behavior, Victor is only disgracing the reputation of the Judicial Committee. After this, Mo officially announces that Jonathan's results have been counted and recognized. Jonathan bows before him in a respectful gesture and expresses gratitude for his prudence and honesty. Victor harbors a grudge, thinking that he will definitely take revenge on Jonathan for what happened. The clock continues to tick, and the other fighters are pushing themselves to the limit to put their best foot forward. Finally, the timer reaches 0, and all the remaining students are teleported back. Nothing foreshadows trouble, and they calmly await the exam results to evaluate their achievements. Mo looks closely at the students and announces the results of the first part of the exam, naming places from 10th to 1st. Some students noted that the statues were too strong, and that was why they were unable to reach higher positions. Some students experienced serious problems, including the loss of several teeth on the part of their animals. Mo, meanwhile, reports that Josie took 2nd place with 1,322 points. People nearby begin to praise her, noting that this is exactly the result they expected from a true genius. No one misses the opportunity to compliment her, emphasizing that she is, as always, at her best. Josie realizes that thanks to the fact that she finally reached level 10, she was able to deal serious damage. After this, Jonathan wonders why his name has not been mentioned yet, not realizing the obvious fact. Josie finished 2nd, and is surprised that Jonathan didn't even make it into the top 10 with 3 powerful beasts. Mo triumphantly announces that Jonathan has won 1st place, adding that he scored a whopping 2,000 points. Everyone else looks at Jonathan in surprise, unable to understand how he managed to achieve such a result. Josie understands that this result is the maximum that can be achieved on this exam. They wonder how this is even possible, since it would require completely destroying the statues. Some even begin to complain about the exam results, convinced that Jonathan simply cheated. Mo quickly puts an end to these rumors, noting that the commission has already checked everything and there were no violations. Students wonder how Jonathan, with such a sign, was able to achieve the highest score, which even surpasses Josie. Some of them start to cry, thinking that there is no place for such weak people here, so they will give up trying. Mo realizes that if these people knew what Jonathan had done in just 4 minutes, they would all fall into despair. Taking a deep breath, he states that the next tests focus on endurance and agility. He also informs them that they will be facing a lava beast, and the longer they last, the more points they will get. Once the test is announced, all students are teleported to a special testing room. Jonathan watches a giant fire monster that looks quite menacing. Jonathan turns on the analysis tools to figure out what to do and carefully studies the lava beast's readings. He discovers that this creature completely ignores physical and elemental damage. Now it becomes clear why this test is called endurance, because it is impossible to destroy this enemy. Sensing new easy prey, the beast moves forward, letting out a menacing roar and spewing flames throughout the arena. Jonathan decides to remain motionless in order to lower his opponent's guard and draw out his strongest attacks. Moments later, the beast directs a giant lava ball towards Jonathan, which could explode at any second. Jonathan jumps into the air at the last moment, thus avoiding much of the damage he would have taken. He understands that if a creature doesn't take damage, but it has a health bar, then it can still be killed. Jonathan remembers that Sintan has a chance to instantly kill any monster whose level is less than 5 times higher than his own. He understands that such a trick could work in this situation, although the chances of it happening are extremely low. But Jonathan still acts relentlessly. Shintan obeys his master's orders and rushes forward, preparing to deliver a powerful blow with his axe. Once he reaches the enemy, he immediately unleashes a massive amount of attacks on them, hoping to activate the skill. The lava beast doesn't even pay attention to such actions and continues to attack Jonathan with its powerful attacks. Jonathan realizes that things are going badly and he will have to come up with something else to defeat this adversary. At the very least, the monster needs to be distracted, so the dragon turtle moves forward, preparing to provoke it. Putting forward her piercing shell, she begins to scream loudly in order to distract the beast's attention. Jonathan exhales tensely, realizing that he is finally safe and can now think about his next move. With only 20 seconds remaining, Shinting glares at his opponent as he still hasn't managed to deal any significant damage. Jonathan wonders why he hasn't had any luck yet, when these techniques used to work like clockwork. The lava beast doesn't stand on ceremony and immediately prepares to continue its series of powerful attacks. Shinchan rushes forward again, hoping that he will now be able to activate his skill. There's another flash of energy in the air, and the system reports that Xingtian's skill has worked and the beast has been defeated. Jonathan smiles happily, realizing that he has finally succeeded in carrying out his brilliant plan. Meanwhile, the situation in the arena remains tense, as the students will clearly not be happy when they learn the results. Mo and his comrades continue to watch the proceedings, waiting for the students to return from the test. Most of the students run out of the arena with loud screams, noting that the monster was indeed very strong. Mo says with disappointment that not even 40 minutes have passed, and this is a sign that the students are getting weaker. Miller notes that, judging by the first test, Jonathan can demonstrate incredible abilities. Victor claims that the boy was just lucky, and the lava beast has absolute protection. Miller disagrees with his colleague, claiming that he believes Jonathan will succeed and win. Victor reminds that the lava beast uses lava rage, an incredibly powerful attack, once an hour. He immediately declares that if Jonathan defeats the monster, he will fulfill his promise by doing a handstand. The newly arrived students note that the latest attacks were simply impossible to dodge and the monster was too strong. Josie also fails to endure the test, thinking that the monster really is too strong. Mo says that it looks like the tests are over since everyone has come out and it's time to announce the results. The technician notes that it is too early to sum up the results, as the system shows that one student is still there. Mo turns around in surprise and asks the technician who the student taking the test is. He confirms that he is talking about participant number 69, who is Jonathan. The other students can't believe that Jonathan has once again performed the best among all the participants. Mo notes that this guy is really interesting since he shows such serious skills. After this, he turns to the students and says that if anyone is still left, they need to wait a little. Miller chuckles, noting that it looks like it's time to make good on his promise. Victor starts to get a little nervous and says with a smile that it was just a joke and shouldn't be taken seriously. Mo reminds that Victor is a tamer and must keep his word, otherwise he has no honor. Victor immediately humbles himself before the authority of his boss and promises that everything will be done in the best possible way. After a while, the timer runs out, and the disgruntled students declare that there is clearly some kind of mistake. Mo announces that time is up, meaning the trials are over, and Jonathan is brought back from there. The technician immediately carries out the command, and the portal begins to materialize. A few moments later, Jonathan appears in this world, having been sleeping peacefully on the floor the whole time. The students watching him cannot believe that he managed the task, even finding time to sleep. Victor laughs loudly, noting that Jonathan clearly used the item to avoid the attacks. Mo yells loudly at Jonathan and asks how much longer he plans to sleep. Jonathan rises to his feet, surprised by the question, and then wonders if the second test has already ended. Victor points his finger at him and claims that Jonathan miscalculated the timing, thereby embarrassing himself. Jonathan looks at Victor in surprise and asks what he means, since he didn't use any prohibited items. Victor orders him not to make a fool of himself, stating that the arena is not his grandmother and he will not stand on ceremony with Jonathan. Jonathan agrees that this is indeed the case and admits that he simply had to remove the obstacle so that it would not hinder him. After this, he wonders if there is a ban on sleeping during the test, if it does not violate anything. Victor turns to his senior colleague and states that the boy claims to have destroyed a creature with complete vulnerability. Jonathan says he has no great desire to argue with them and suggests checking the system data straight away. Mo agrees that it's a good idea and then turns to the technician working on the computer. Victor states that Jonathan can hide behind excuses as much as he wants, but it won't change the exam results. Miller sighs in disappointment, reflecting on how the boy had shown great promise but turned out to be a disappointment. A few days later, the technical staff member reports that the results are ready and are being uploaded. Victor immediately demands information about whether Jonathan cheated or not. The technician explains that at 25 minutes and 18 seconds, Jonathan's beast activated a special skill and instantly destroyed the enemy. Mo can't believe his ears, trying to figure out how he could destroy such an opponent. The employee adds that no one had killed this beast before, so the system did not provide for automatic teleportation. The students watching near Jonathan wonder who it is and begin to get indignant. Jonathan decides to approach Mo, declaring that he is just a student and has no right to argue with the examiner. However, he adds that he does not intend to put up with Victor's baseless accusations. Mo states that a mistake has occurred and apologizes on behalf of the entire student body. Turning to Victor, he informs him that he has been stripped of his examiner status and sends him to think about his behavior. Victor immediately asks for forgiveness, admitting his mistake. But in fact, it is already too late. Mo officially declares that Jonathan has received maximum points for the second challenge, and the final stage begins in 30 minutes. Students watching nearby note that the young man is a real monster. Some girls feel a strong attraction to the main character, not realizing that he is interested in something completely different. Mo understands that this event is a serious precedent, and now the exam rules will have to be revised. He suddenly wonders if Jonathan is the man they are looking for up there. Mo, turning to a technical staff member, orders Jonathan's data to be sent to the capital immediately. The action takes place in the Temple of Fate, which is located in the capital of the Dragon Empire. The masters there are still awaiting the results of the search for the summoner who was able to subdue the three beasts. One of the elders, Edgar, reports that 2 stages of the examination have already been conducted in all regions. A colleague named Wolf adds that so far they have not found any leads and no one stands out from the crowd. Another martial artist named Barry claims that in his geographic area, everything is also within normal limits. An elder named Eugene reports that there was a strong cadet in Shanghai, but after checking, it turned out that he was not the one they were looking for. Edgar notes that this was the best chance to find the right person, and is annoyed that they failed to do so. Barry wonders if they're wrong, noting that the guy might not be taking the exams this year. Edgar states that in that case their actions were wrong, as they could completely lose track of the man. After some time, a temple employee informs the authorities that an urgent letter has arrived from Mo. Edgar looks closely at his subordinate and asks what happened. The servant reports that a real talent has appeared in one of the provinces who may be suitable for the role they are looking for. Barry assumes that it is Miller's daughter and adds that he has already checked her. The young man reports that this is not Miller's daughter, but some guy named Jonathan. Wolf pronounces the name carefully, trying to figure out if he has heard of such a person before. Eugene states that he has never encountered this man before and knows nothing about him. Edgar orders the servant to waste no time and report immediately what happened. The servant reports that on the first test, Jonathan destroyed both examination statues in 4 minutes. He also reports that during the second test, this cadet destroyed a lava beast with absolute defense with 1 blow. This information makes a strong impression on all the elders, who understand that this boy is truly strong. They immediately slam their chairs, claiming that this is definitely the one they are looking for and there can be no doubt. Barry looks at his comrades and declares that no one else will dare to disturb the order in the territory they control. Eugene reports that the student immediately proved himself to be a phoenix and instantly gained respect. Wolf feels a strong sense of envy and thinks how great it would be if this student ended up on his territory. Edgar declares that it's time to stop talking and get ready to watch this guy. Barry agrees with this proposal, noting that there is no time to waste. However, just as he is about to go with his comrades, he is stopped. Edgar explains that he must remain here in the Temple of Fate, as he cannot be left unattended. Wolf passes by, declaring that for now they will personally communicate with the young talent. Barry begins to get indignant, wondering why they went to meet the interesting person and not him. Mo meets his superiors and apologizes for the fact that the greeting procedure was not carried out properly. Edgar says they can dispense with formalities because that's not what they came here for. After this, they excitedly ask where a student named Jonathan is. Mo looks at them in surprise, not expecting such zeal from experienced craftsmen. When they approach the observation post, they point to Jonathan and announce that he is the one they are looking for. Jonathan doesn't suspect anything yet and stands calmly next to the other students, awaiting the verdict. Edgar is impressed by Jonathan's beauty and declares that he is a true hero under heaven. Wolf notes that it is better not to jump to conclusions because a person must first pass the third test. Edgar turns to Mo and advises him not to delay, stating that it is time to begin the final test. Mo bows before them in respect and confirms that he will fulfill their demands. A few minutes later, he comes out onto the playground to address the other students who have been waiting for a long time. Mo advises that everyone should understand in advance what powerful enemies they will face. He explains that they will have to fight disaster monsters, and this may undermine the morale of some students. Mo reassures the students, explaining that everything will be fine and there is no need to worry, as the judges will be watching everything. He reveals that the disaster monster is merely a model created by the exam's artificial intelligence. He adds that for every minute they will receive 500 points, and the test itself will last 10 minutes. The students realize that scoring so many points in 1 minute against this monster is their chance to move forward. Jonathan watches them and realizes that they are naive, as the monster is quite complex. Mo gives a final briefing and then announces that the test is about to begin, teleporting the students away. Jonathan instantly finds himself face to face with an incredible monster, which is preparing for a brutal attack. Jonathan immediately analyzes the enemy, realizing that he is level 16, which means he will have to wear him down. Scintian's strike won't work here because the level difference is too big, meaning the strategy will be completely different. Wolf and Eugene watch Jonathan's battle closely through hidden security cameras. Edgar states that these are definitely the beasts that recently appeared in the Temple of Fate. Eugene enthusiastically notes that the man is a true genius, creating the incredible. Wolf can't believe that the beast can deal so much damage in one hit, even though his opponent is a disaster monster. Eugene wonders how great Jonathan's talent is if his summons are so powerful. Edgar orders the man's status to be checked as quickly as possible, and the technician dives into the data. However, after some time, he encounters something amazing and admits that he cannot understand what it is. Edgar quickly asks his subordinate what is going on there and why he is so surprised. Jonathan reports that the system cannot fully reflect his characteristics and only shows that he has an SSS rank talent. Wolf wonders why they can't look up Jonathan's stats. Edgar explains that this could mean either a system limitation or a lack of access to this information. Eugene suggests that Jonathan's mark of the beast is higher than the divine rank. Edgar states that their limit is 12 light crystals upon awakening. However, it turns out that this does not apply to Jonathan, as he is a true divergent. Wolf and Eugene begin to cry and remark that this is an incredible joy, because the Empire finally has a chance to be saved. Jonathan, meanwhile, reports that the monster is already on its last legs and orders the Sunset Dragon to finish it off. Having received a huge amount of damage, the monster falls dead, and the system notifies Jonathan that the crocodile has been defeated. Jonathan is happy, noting that he was already starting to get bored, and now the exams are finally over. However, after a few moments, a huge number of animals appear next to him. Jonathan turns around at them in fear, trying to understand where these creatures came from. All these animals look quite threatening and are not friendly towards Jonathan. Jonathan hands over control to the dragon turtle and orders it to slowly use taunt to draw attention to itself. He also summons the Sunset Dragon to deal with the villains who have attempted to take his life. Edgar, Wolf, and Eugene watch the scene closely, trying to figure out where the animals came from. Wolf suddenly wonders if it would be fair to increase the difficulty of the challenge just for Jonathan. Edgar states that this man is destined to raise the Dragon Empire from its knees, so he must be ready for that too. Eugene wonders what will happen to the glasses Jonathan will receive after this test. Edgar explains that the young man has overcome the disaster, which means he has the highest possible score in all 3 tests. Jonathan, meanwhile, is having a hard time as the large number of monsters can still damage him. However, at a certain point, he decides to use the Soul Rip skill to deal a powerful blow. Edgar wonders what is going on because the monster just hit him, but he doesn't feel any pain. Wolf turns to the technical staffer and orders that everything be checked immediately to ensure that everything is honest. The technician explains that the AI believes Jonathan is transferring damage to his beasts. Edgar turns around in surprise, realizing that he has never encountered such passive abilities before. This also applies to Wolf, who in his entire life has never encountered anything even remotely similar. Eugene remarks that this is all starting to seem nonsense and jokes about needing a heart pill. After some time, a giant dragon appears in the air, looking incredibly threatening. He looks at Jonathan's summoned beasts and reports that he has finally found his target. Meanwhile, Sintan crushes all his opponents, but suddenly the monster right in front of him disappears. Jonathan wonders where all the monsters have disappeared to and shares the surprise of the Shin-chan he summoned. A few moments later, the answer makes itself known in the form of a black hole forming directly above his head. Jonathan looks at the dragon that emerged from the hole in surprise and asks what happened this time. After analyzing the threat, he receives a notification that a punishing disaster dragon with hidden parameters is in front of him. Only a moment passes, and this dragon already manages to send a clot of energy towards Jonathan. Jonathan jumps up, realizing that the dragon is a much more formidable opponent than he expected. He wonders how such a creature could even appear on the exam, because something is clearly wrong. When the dragon appeared, the video cameras immediately began to malfunction and stopped transmitting images. Edgar wonders what happened, demanding that the image in the room be restored. Wolf orders all technicians to come here so they can see what's happening. Meanwhile, a comet appears in the air, which is actually a good sign. Edgar and the other elders go outside to find out what the strange sound is. A bright phoenix appears, heralding the arrival of a true hero of this world. This hero turns out to be Ms. Wendy, who possesses incredibly high strength levels. Edgar greets her, after which the other elders also bow in respect before the powerful fighter. Wendy looks at them carefully and asks where the young man she has been looking for so long is. Edgar asks in surprise who exactly she means. Wendy clarifies that she is interested in that same genius guy they had been talking about for a long time. Edgar reports that Jonathan is currently undergoing final tests in room 11, but contact with him has been lost. Without thinking twice, Wendy decides to break the time continuum and goes straight to this room. Meanwhile, Zintan is in serious trouble as the monster proves too strong for him. Jonathan understands that this battle will not be an easy walk, which means he needs to focus. If it weren't for the dragon turtle's resilience and the buff from divine animation, he would have already died. The dragon, meanwhile, does not want to waste time and continues to mercilessly attack Jonathan. At a certain point, he finds himself cornered and has no choice but to die with honor. However, suddenly he finds himself in a completely different place, although he was already prepared to give his life. Looking around, he wonders how he is still alive. A few minutes later, he sees in front of him a beautiful girl who saved him at the very last moment. Wendy turns to look at him and asks if he's okay. Jonathan explains that thanks to her, he was able to get out and expresses his gratitude. The dragon appears before Wendy and asks how she dared to interfere and ruin his plans. The girl orders the dragon to return to where he came from. The dragon notes that his presence is not a serious threat, although his tongue is longer than usual. He asks how Wendy plans to drive him away, and she releases her fire phoenix. An incredible confrontation arises between these two that cannot end easily. The giant serpent emerges victorious from the battle, but is too badly wounded to continue his plan. Wendy hints to him that if he doesn't get out of here now, then he won't get any mercy and she will finish him off. The serpent menacingly informs that the shell is only a projection of his will and has not caused him any harm. After this, he disappears, warning that the day will come when he will tear everyone to pieces with incredible ease. The students wonder what it was, realizing that what is happening is starting to frighten them even more. Jonathan sees that Wendy is starting to lose strength and asks if she is okay. Wendy replies that she is fine, but this is not the place for talking, so it is better to go to the relaxation area. Jonathan nods quickly and says he will follow her immediately. After some time, they find themselves in a comfortable room, which is also soundproof. Jonathan asks what it was, being respectful and careful in his handling. Wendy explains that he needs to know about a tragic event that happened 10 years ago. She reveals that they lost 2 level 100 great parents while fighting unsuccessfully. Jonathan looks at her in surprise and wonders if this dragon really came here from the abyss. Wendy confirms Jonathan's guess and adds that the dragon has chosen him as its target. Jonathan asks a logical question. What did he do wrong that the dragon ordered an attack on him? Wendy explains that the dragon sensed a mortal threat in him and decided to eliminate it beforehand. She emphasizes that the reason for this was his beasts, which possess an incredible level of strength. She recalls that in Country J, the 8-headed beast Orochi was summoned, which cleared the territory of all threats. In the land of K, a vengeful mountain spirit was summoned and scattered throughout the forbidden zones shrouded in fog. Jonathan has 2 SS rank beasts and 1 SSS rank beast, so he will become the strongest person in the world in the future. Wendy urges him to consider what any sane person would do in the place of this creature from the abyss. Jonathan understands that any intelligent being would destroy the threat in advance to avoid problems in the future. Wendy notes that he must therefore be extremely careful and use force as little as possible. Jonathan says that hiding his whole life is not an option for him, as he plans to enroll in the Heavenly Dragon Academy. Wendy smiles, realizing that Jonathan's character is truly heroic, which means he has every chance of winning. Rising to her feet, she announces that in 3 days, the Heavenly Dragon Academy will hold a joint test. She adds that she is reserving 1 place for him and advises him to use this time to prepare. Jonathan looks at her in surprise and asks if this means he will be enrolled as a student. Wendy explains that he will get first place in the entire country, so there is nothing surprising about it. Jonathan thanks Wendy and says he will never forget her kindness. Wendy worries that the abyssal creature, with its new power, could once again descend upon the Empire. She expresses hope that in the future, Jonathan will become one of the defenders of their side to protect the Empire. Jonathan claims that he can be relied upon as he will never let them down. Wendy nods silently and recommends that Jonathan either practice or get some rest. After some time, Jonathan and Josie decide to meet in a small park to discuss what happened. Josie asks him if he was talking to the girl who suddenly saved him. Jonathan immediately becomes nervous, explaining that Josie shouldn't talk nonsense since this girl just saved his life. He adds that for his sake, she sacrificed her very high-ranking beast, which is a heroic act. Josie asks if he should marry her as a thank you for such an act. Jonathan turns to her and explains that apparently, someone is jealous of him for this girl. Josie states that she didn't mean anything like that and then walks away. Jonathan starts laughing, clarifying that he was just joking and shouldn't be taken seriously. Charlie reports that Josie finished second in the provincial rankings, which is a commendable result. After that, he jokes and asks Skylar if Jonathan's results haven't been sent yet. Skylar pretends no one knows that Jonathan got perfect scores on all the tests and explains that everything will come in time. Charlie also pretends that he didn't see or hear anything, declaring that Jonathan won't be able to take first place anyway. Jonathan carefully opens the doors and addresses his mentor, explaining that he has finally returned from the ordeal. Skylar asks him why he is here, since the exam participants are supposed to arrive tomorrow. Charlie explains that the answer is obvious, since Jonathan returned before everyone else and in disgrace. Jonathan claims that these accusations are complete nonsense, as he completed all the tests with the highest possible score. Skylar looks at him in surprise, not believing that he was able to pass all the tests with the highest score. Charlie declares that such fairy tales are suitable for kindergarten, because in the entire history of the event, no one has achieved anything like this. A few moments later, his phone buzzes loudly, attracting attention. Charlie takes the leaderboard that came to his phone and says that now they will figure everything out. Having reached second place, he notes that the result, as expected, belongs to Josie. Looking closer, he discovers Jonathan standing proudly in first place. Charlie says that this simply can't be true and doesn't believe that Jonathan actually ended up that high. Skylar starts laughing out loud when she hears her colleague's indignation at being too negative towards Jonathan. After this, he notes that he knew that his student would not disappoint him in any situation. Jonathan reports that he has already been accepted into the Heavenly Dragon Academy, which means he is leaving tomorrow, and he came to report this. Skylar congratulates him, noting that it is an honor for the school, and urges Jonathan to arrive as soon as possible. Jonathan nods, assuring his mentor that he will never let him down. After some time, the scene moves to the Heavenly Dragon Academy. Jonathan approaches the academy gates, noting that the journey was quite long. He is thinking about the fact that he was supposed to be met when suddenly a girl rushes towards him. Reaching Jonathan, she apologizes for being late and stops to catch her breath. The girl explains that she had some things to do, so she had to stay a little longer. She asks Jonathan to follow her, and he greets her. The girl says that she is his supervisor, adding that her name is Lindsay and he can contact her with any questions. Having led him to a beautiful room, she explains that he will now live here. Jonathan thanks her for showing him to the room and notes that it is cozy and comfortable. Lindsay immediately stops him, clarifying that this is not all she wanted to say. Afterwards, she presents him with the award for placing first in the Heavenly Dragon Academy entrance exam. Jonathan realizes that he has been offered 2 skill upgrades and an entire skill book. He notes that the academy is truly one of the best in the country because they don't skimp on their students. Lindsay also hands him a bag of money, explaining that it is 5,000 academy coins as a bonus. Jonathan asks what these coins are for, trying to understand how they differ from regular money. Lindsay explains that this is an internal currency that can be used to purchase various materials and equipment. She warns him not to waste his money as everything here is expensive, and Jonathan thanks her. She then points out that it is quite late, so he had better go upstairs and get some rest. Jonathan follows her advice and heads to his cozy room. Holding his scroll in his hands, he decides to first improve his soul break and summon skills. The system congratulates him on increasing his summon beast and soul break skills to level 2. Jonathan immediately goes to the stats window to see what stats he now has. To his happiness, Jonathan discovers that he can now summon 4 beasts. If he had acted differently, he would have been able to summon 5 at once. However, now he can see what skill he has acquired, which means it is time to turn to the book. He is given a book of Ice Fog, which can slow down the enemy's movement with a small chance to freeze them. Jonathan realizes that even though this skill only has a range of 10 meters, it is an incredible find. A moment later, the system happily notifies him again that he has received a new skill, Ice Fog. Jonathan collapses onto his bed, realizing that his build was missing exactly the control effects. And now everything is perfect. The next morning, he is awakened by the loud sound of the telephone. Jonathan picks up the phone and puts it to his ear, asking who decided to contact him. An unknown man greets him and explains that he is in charge of the tests on Black Rock Island. He also recommends that Jonathan head to the conference room to meet the other participants, and Jonathan agrees. Once in the conference room, there are several people standing in front of him, looking at him with surprise. The girl addresses him kindly, explaining that he is the provincial champion and the only student accepted here without competition. Jonathan is a little embarrassed and points out that he is not that special and she should not flatter him. The girl says she wants to introduce him to the teammates he will be living with. The first thing she introduces to him is Vernon, who is a level 25 attack-type Tamer. Jonathan approaches him and extends his hand, saying it is nice to meet him. Vernon answers him angrily, asking if he is really the weakling his uncle was talking about. Jonathan asks in surprise who his uncle is who speaks about him like that. Vernon explains that his uncle is Victor, one of the 8 chief examiners in the province this year. Jonathan steps away and notes that now everything falls into place and his attitude towards him is clear. Vernon slaps Jonathan's hand away, saying that some level 11 lowlife isn't worthy of a handshake. A girl named Evelina admonishes him, clarifying that Jonathan is the best student this year and deserves respect. Vernon continues to act arrogant and cynical, noting that every second person at the academy is a genius. Spitting to the side, he says that in his eyes, Jonathan will still remain an empty space forever. Jonathan decides to talk some sense into Vernon and gives him a powerful slap that sends him flying. The force of the impact is so severe that Vernon crashes into the wall at full speed. Vernon's supporters ask him how he dared to attack his older brother so suddenly. Vernon calls Jonathan a little bastard and asks what he thinks he's doing. Jonathan just dusts off his hands and asks with a smile what he did to deserve such anger. Vernon says that Jonathan is definitely seeking his own death by doing this and throws an energy ball in his direction. However, just as the ball was about to reach Jonathan, it suddenly disappears. Vernon looks around nervously, trying to figure out where the little bastard who dared to hit him had disappeared to. Jonathan decides to use the mask to shed his camouflage and appear behind him. Immediately after, he uses the soul break skill to give Vernon a good hit. Vernon falls to the ground, and Jonathan declares that if he tries to attack him again, there will be no mercy. After this, Jonathan notes that the introduction to the team can be considered complete and says goodbye to everyone else. Evelina looks at him with a confused look, as she didn't expect this to turn into a fight. The hooligans nearby wonder if this guy is really only level 11. His comrade notes that it doesn't matter since he was able to take out a level 25 fighter with one blow. Vernon, in his snotty way, says with glee that this damn snot will still pay for what he did, because he will not leave it. Jonathan strolls calmly through the academy pavilion, thinking about what to do today. Evelina follows him, clicking to get his attention. Jonathan turns around and asks what happened and why she decided to catch up with him. Evelina warns him that Vernon is a very noticeable jerk, so he should be careful. Jonathan notes that he will take this information into account and asks where he can level up. Evelina explains that there is a suitable place in the east and promises to send the coordinates soon. Jonathan thanks her and prepares to head to that place to level up his skills. After some time, the action moves to a portal next to the dungeon of the ferocious wolf. Jonathan goes further and finds himself in a very ominous cave, which seems to be located somewhere in the desert. However, the calm does not last long, as a huge number of evil eyes immediately light up in front of him. A few moments later, several high-level wolves come out to meet him, grinning and growling angrily. Of course, these wolves can do nothing against the main character, on whose side such magnificent animals fight. Jonathan orders them to destroy these opponents, stating that in the meantime he will take care of his new beast. While his beasts deal with the pathetic wolves, he takes out a scroll to use the summoning skill. A powerful portal appears in the air, from which emerges the mighty paw of an unknown beast of mysterious origin. Jonathan doesn't understand who is in front of him at first, but the system informs him that he has summoned an ancient SSS-ranked Fey beast. Jonathan immediately orders the characteristics to be opened to find out what kind of strange beast is in front of him. The system reports that this beast can create an infected area, dealing poison damage equal to 30% of spiritual power. Jonathan orders this beast to show what it can do, and the mystical Fey decides to prove himself from the best side. One blow from Fey is enough to destroy all the wolves in the affected area at once. Jonathan receives a huge number of awards and notes that this animal cannot be called the most powerful poisonous creature. Meanwhile, the scene moves to the heavenly temples, and Edgar and his colleagues continue to discuss business. Another temple servant runs in and reports that another SSS rank beast has appeared. Barry advises Edgar to calm down and notes that they are already used to this kind of thing. Edgar chuckles and says that just recently he felt as excited as a girl. Barry asks to at least let him play a prank on him and have the opportunity to be the largest man in the world. Edgar smiles and says that it is indeed time to get used to such situations, which happen too often. Eugene chuckles and notes that at this rate, old Barry is definitely going to have a heart attack. Meanwhile, Jonathan continues his march through the cave, victoriously destroying everything in his path. He understands that with the new beast, his speed of completing the dungeon has significantly increased due to area damage. However, it is too early to celebrate victory. The most powerful creature in the cave appears before him. Jonathan decides to analyze his opponent and is amazed by the incredible characteristics of this wolf. In this new situation, any person would be afraid, but the wolf encounters a valiant hero, and the outcome seems predetermined. The giant creature decides to attack with psychic damage and lets out a loud roar towards Jonathan. At this time, spiritual minions appear, preparing to enter the battle in place of the master. Jonathan chuckles at such pathetic attempts and notes that this is just a battlefield to test new skills. Taking proper aim, he decides to use Ice Mist on these enemies. The results of the skill turn out to be much higher than what he originally planned. Jonathan wonders if he misread the skill description, as the radius is definitely not 10 meters. He then remembers the divine inspiration, which enhances all his skills and the skills of the beasts tenfold. He smiles and remarks that these monsters are now no different from bags of experience that can be destroyed. Quickly summoning his beasts, he orders them to deal with the pitiful blocks of ice, breaking them into small pieces. After 10 minutes, the wolf really does turn into nothing more than a pile of corpses, from which a lot of experience can be extracted. The system congratulates the protagonist on reaching level 12, which he has been saving up for a long time. Jonathan smiles sincerely and notes that he really enjoys going through the dungeon and getting a lot of experience. After a few moments, the system returns him back and repairs the path to the exit of the cave. Pulling himself up a little, he says that he will finally be able to go back and get some rest. Moments later, he encounters Selena, who looks like she has been attacked. She calls for help, and Jonathan decides to answer, while also finding out what she's doing there. Selena doesn't immediately find him in the pitch darkness and crashes right into his strong, muscular body. Stopping, she asks him for help, explaining that people from the Black Shark Guild want to kill her. Due to the injuries she sustained, she begins to lose consciousness and collapses right in Jonathan's arms. A few moments later, several bandits enter the arena and order him to give up the girl and leave. Jonathan realizes that the time has come to save the heroine and refuses to obey their demand. The villains grab the weapon and threaten that in this case he will die a cruel death together with her. One of the criminals says that he knows Jonathan, because when his comrades disappeared, he went to deal with him. A sinister smile crosses his face as he states that, according to intelligence, the boy has a rare artifact on him. The bandit notes that in that case they were incredibly lucky to have stumbled upon him. After this, he says that if the boy leaves them his artifact and this woman, perhaps they will spare him. Jonathan asks him if he has decided to try his luck before he dies, demonstrating his steadfastness. The bandit loses his patience and asks why Jonathan is playing the hero when his chances are zero. Without thinking twice, he orders his subordinates to rush forward to finish off the arrogant enemies. Jonathan immediately turns to his animals, who are instantly ready to tear and throw anyone who encroaches on their master. He himself watches what is happening, not believing that the boy has 4 beasts of the highest ranks. The criminals fall to their knees and surrender, explaining that there was a misunderstanding and asking to forget their words. Jonathan arrogantly asks them if they really think they can insult him and then walk away as if nothing happened. Not wanting to spare the criminals, he gives his beasts the command to rush forward and tear them all to pieces. There are piercing screams all around, but no one comes to the aid of the bastards from the Black Shark Guild. Jonathan picks up the exhausted Selena in his arms and decides to get her out of here as quickly as possible to help her. However, after a while, he hears a strange rustling sound behind him and orders those who are following him to slowly show themselves. A boy emerges from the bushes, swearing that he is friendly and does not intend to attack. Jonathan sternly asks him what he was doing there and why he was following him all this time. The young man claims that he saw the girl being chased and decided to wait for an opportunity to help her. He also notes that as soon as he wanted to intervene, Jonathan had already destroyed everyone, so he decided not to get in the way. Jonathan looks sternly at the boy, making it clear that what happened must remain a secret. The young man replies that he will keep the secret in the grave, and if he blabs, he will be cursed for many years. Jonathan says he's glad to hear it, hinting that otherwise the consequences will be much more serious. The boy assures that there is no need to worry, because once he makes a promise, he will not go back on it. After some time, Jonathan gets to his room, which at this point no one is checking. Holding Selena in his arms, he makes his way to the bed and tries to figure out how he can help her now. By laying her on a soft mattress, he hopes that she will be able to recover relatively quickly. He also notes that the girl appears incredibly fragile and that it was not easy to carry her. After examining her, he realizes that she won't wake up anytime soon, so he decides to take a shower first. While the protagonist takes a shower, Selena feels much better, and the wounds on her face heal on their own. She wonders where she is and suddenly sees Jonathan in front of her coming out of the shower. Selena begins to get scared, suspecting that he is about to do something indecent. Jonathan asks her to calm down and explains that he just decided to take a shower and she shouldn't make things up. Selena says she doesn't believe him and recommends that he take responsibility since he was her first man. Jonathan starts to feel uncomfortable and asks her to stop making fun of him since he didn't do anything. Selena laughs heartily, noting that he should have seen her reaction to his confusion. Jonathan asks her why the people from the Black Shark Guild suddenly wanted to kill her. Selena decides to reveal the true reason for the attack and takes out a small, glowing scroll from her inventory. She reports that she has a valuable treasure map in her hands that could bring considerable profit. Jonathan is surprised and tries to understand where the map leads, and most importantly, what kind of treasure it is. Selena claims she has no idea how these people knew about her, but her guild sent a whole squad. According to her story, she ran away from them for a long time, but all was in vain, after which she came across Jonathan, and then the story becomes clear. Jonathan warns her that such things need to be hidden in safe places so that they don't get stolen. Selena agrees, and notes that she didn't have time to hide the map properly. Without thinking twice, she suggests giving the card to Jonathan since it will be safe with him. Jonathan is surprised, trying to figure out if she really wants to give him this card. Selena claims that he saved her life, and if it weren't for him, she would have been killed and the map would have ended up in the hands of the real criminals. Jonathan says it didn't cost him anything, but the item is too valuable, so it's better to keep it for himself. Selena laughs and notes that she accepted his good intentions. She asks him if he really wants her to pay him back differently, adding that she doesn't mind. Josie suddenly bursts into the room and asks Jonathan why he isn't answering her calls. One can only imagine how tense the silence in the room becomes as it becomes difficult to explain what is happening. Josie feels incredibly angry and wonders what they are doing here in the middle of the night. Selena immediately blushes and starts playing along, saying that someone broke into this room at an inconvenient time. Josie looks at Jonathan with disapproval and remarks that she never thought he would turn out to be such a person. Jonathan asks her to be calm and listen to him so that he can properly explain what is going on here. Selena looks at Josie in surprise, wondering if she is his girlfriend, which would explain her reaction. Jonathan says that this is not true, since they just went to school together before and have nothing in common beyond that. Afterwards, he asks Josie why she even came here at such a late hour when entry to the academy is prohibited. Josie admits that she really shouldn't have come because then she wouldn't have found them in such a shameful state. Jonathan advises her not to talk nonsense and explains that nothing really happened between them. Selena also gets out of bed and states that they met recently and there was no intimacy between them. Josie is skeptical and points out that it doesn't mean anything yet. After this, she turns around in fear and leaves, saying that they are simply running away terribly and quickly. Jonathan tries to stop her, explaining that she should listen to him, but she doesn't even listen. Selena watches what is happening and realizes that this time she has gone too far with her flirting. This is also the perfect moment to slip out of Jonathan's room, which he decides to take advantage of. Finally, she says goodbye to him and says that it is already late, so it is time for her to go home and wishes him good night. Left in proud solitude, Jonathan falls onto the bed and wonders why he has to endure all this. However, suddenly he feels that his body has come across something unusual, and he tries to understand what it is. One can only imagine his surprise when he finds out that in front of him is the very treasure map that Selena left him. The system informs him that he has received the location of a secret area and recommends that he go after the team. Hearing the word team, he notes that this question is out of the question since he himself is very strong and decides to go there today. The next day, he goes to that very secret area, which at first glance looks quite welcoming. However, after a few moments, he realizes that this is a secret entrance to the goblin's lair and jumps into the portal. Jonathan senses the threat emanating from this place even before he fully materializes. He notices that the map is dissolving in his hand and realizes that the location is one-time use and cannot be accessed again. Before he can react, a huge number of goblins are already running towards him, defending their territory. These goblins prove to be much more formidable opponents and are a stronger version of the normal enemies. Jonathan manages to notice them thanks to his pumped-up perception skill and summons his beasts. Pointing to his opponents, he notes that the time has come to rush into battle and destroy these scoundrels once and for all. Teamwork between the animals improves with each battle, and the turtle already knows that it needs to provoke its enemies first. The mystical beast Fae rushes into battle, unleashing a poisonous attack that covers a large area. Jonathan notices that the goblins have received a serious dose of poisoning, but their health still remains high. Looking at his opponents, he activates his analysis ability to learn their strengths and weaknesses. The system tells him that these goblins have quite high strength and endurance stats. Jonathan becomes even more happy with this information and realizes that this is indeed a secret location where he can level up. 20 minutes pass, and having destroyed almost all the monsters, he receives a gigantic amount of experience. Moreover, to get such a quantity of experience, he didn't even have to exert himself seriously, and he even dozed off. Xintian comes closer to him to wake him up and informs him that the cleanup of this place is complete. Immediately after this, Jonathan decides to check how thoroughly the cleanup was carried out and what interesting things were left behind by the monsters. Unfortunately, we were unable to boast of any serious acquisitions, and we will have to limit ourselves to just a large amount of experience. Jonathan conducts research because, despite the experience gained, he was unable to obtain anything valuable. A powerful bolt of lightning flies past, fries him and makes him think about his behavior. Jonathan thrashes for a moment as the electricity jolts through his body, burning for a moment. He becomes enraged, wondering who dared to attack him from behind at such a moment. It turns out that the turtle had been fighting the boss all this time and decided to bring him here to help finish the fight. Jonathan looks at the giant and turns on his analysis ability to identify the enemy's weaknesses. There's clearly something wrong with this boss, as his stats are much lower than he expected for such a giant. However, this doesn't stop him from rushing forward, and he snaps his fingers, calling forth a powerful blast of energy. A moment later, the monster is attacked, taking a massive amount of damage. The level 17 Goblin Chieftain is defeated, and the protagonist receives a whopping 10,000 experience. Jonathan is trying to figure out what's going on here because if the boss can be killed in one hit, it seems too weak for a treasure map. However, a few moments later, a strong earthquake occurs and rocks begin to fall on him from above. Jonathan remains hopeful that this doesn't mean the ceiling is about to collapse and bury him along with it. Looking around, he sees a giant hole that appeared after the earthquake. Jonathan realizes that this is a passage to the second level, noting that everything couldn't have been that simple. However, he decides not to hesitate, and together with his animals, jumps down towards adventures and mortal dangers. As soon as he lands, he steps on the trap, and he only has a nanosecond to react. Luckily, a powerful turtle comes to his aid, activating a protective barrier and blocking the arrow. Jonathan realizes that at the second level, these goblins already have such a powerful weapon. Nevertheless, he orders the dragon and Jingtian to deal with the enemies as quickly as possible. His animals carry out the command almost instantly, while he decides to take a look at their characteristics. Looking closer, he realizes that these guards are at the boss level from the first level. Meanwhile, Sintan does not perceive the goblins as serious opponents and crushes them with his axe. Jonathan doesn't lag behind and decides to use the flying fog skill. Within moments, almost all of the goblins are frozen under a thick layer of ice, unable to move or attack. Jonathan grins and notes that he was able to immediately apply the freezing effect, although the chance was low. Sintan realizes it's time to deal the finishing blows and decapitates several goblins at once. Jonathan commands the mystical beast Faye to lead the way, noting that it is time to fight the boss. The mysterious animal rushes forward, leaving behind a bright trail that can be followed back. Shintan follows the beast on its heels, destroying all the goblins that he encounters along the way. The dragon also follows him, lighting the way with bright flashes to avoid being ambushed. And at this pace, they reach the end of the dungeon, where a powerful boss awaits them. In front of them sits a giant goblin king, who looks even more serious than the previous opponent. Jonathan looks at the giant chest that the king is guarding and realizes that it contains valuable treasures. Before entering into battle, he decides to carefully analyze the enemy in order to choose the most correct combination of animals. The monster's stats impress the protagonist, who notes that the Goblin King is like a level 15 disaster. However, this doesn't stop him from making a daring maneuver and using the Soul Rip skill on the monster. The goblin takes serious hits and immediately calls on his minions to join the fight. Jonathan understands that the insult inflicted by such a mental slap can only be washed away with blood. He turns to the dragon and orders it to use its fire breath to destroy the advancing goblins. The dragon immediately follows its master and incinerates the small green degenerates. The enraged Goblin King rushes forward, hoping to take revenge on the dragoness, but in vain. Jonathan counters him with a one-missed skill to significantly slow down his movement. The Goblin King doesn't have time to understand why he suddenly has difficulty walking, when suddenly Zintan decides to punish him with an axe. Finding the perfect angle to strike, he delivers a devastating attack, dealing significant damage to the opponent. The Goblin King is defeated fairly quickly, and the protagonist receives 20,000 experience points. Immediately after this, the chest begins to jingle melodically, after which its heavy lock opens by itself. Jonathan rushes forward hoping for luck and wonders what he has already been dealt. The chest contains the ancient goblin pose, which significantly increases your stamina and mental skills. Jonathan realizes that he can now get rid of the unnecessary junk he has been carrying around with him all this time. After this, he continues to search the chest, hoping to find something more valuable. It unlocks access to a spirit crystal, which increases his mental abilities by another 500 units. Jonathan is very happy with these amplifiers when he suddenly discovers that the chest holds several more secrets. He finds holy water, which allows him to activate his passive skills early. Jonathan is greatly surprised by such a powerful item that was kept in this place and decides to try it. He also understands that he is incredibly lucky, and that alone was worth coming here for. Slowly opening the flask, he hopes to gain some cool skill. Without wasting any time, he drinks the bottle of this liquid. The system reports that he has received the passive skill Aura of Purification, which grants immunity to negative effects. Jonathan remembers that while he was fighting monsters, he often faced worse situations, but now everything will be easier. Having received the aura, he understands that everything will be within his power, and after a little time, his capabilities increase significantly. Turning around, he realizes that he has found everything he could here and heads home. This day can be considered a success, as Jonathan was able to obtain a lot of useful equipment and awaken a passive skill. Meanwhile, the action moves to Black Rocks Island, where the next classes are about to begin. Jonathan approaches Evelina, greets her rudely, and announces that he has finally arrived here. Evelina nods welcomingly and says that since everyone is gathered, they should divide into teams of 5 people. Hearing this, some students decide to join Vernon, explaining that they would make a great team. Following him, many other students also join the team, declaring that they will be of assistance. Vernon looks at them with ill-concealed contempt, then smiles and notes that everyone is very energetic. After this, he turns his attention to Jonathan, noting that the genius boy is left alone, and he even feels sorry for him. The students claim that he is not that brilliant, and that it is better to be alone than with low-level people. Evelina, like a bright ray of sunshine among these arrogant students, says that she will go with them. They ask her, because this is a test on the Black Rocks Island where you can die. Evelina explains that her faith in Jonathan is incredibly strong because he has proven himself to be a tough person. Vernon states that this belief is of no use, and that he doesn't even have a team, so he's unlikely to get into the test. However, another person intervenes in the matter whose appearance no one expected. The student who was following Jonathan and Selena, named Don Juan, says he would be happy to keep Jonathan company. Jonathan looks at his new friend in surprise and asks what he is doing here. Don Juan explains that at first he couldn't predict that they were from the same academy, and says that he is a good tank. He immediately begins to curry favor with the main character and asks if he is against such participation. Vernon immediately criticizes Don Juan, asking if he is being too fawning. Don Juan declares that if he is insulted again, he will immediately attack with his fists. Vernon notes that he will make him regret what he said, as he cannot forgive such things. Don Juan turns to a man standing nearby and recommends that he join the team. A mysterious student named Lou finds the offer tempting and agrees to be on the team with them. Don Juan looks around and says that they are missing one team member and recommends joining immediately. People nearby believe that if they are going to the test, others should not be involved. Almost the entire academy is against them, despite the fact that they have done nothing wrong to anyone. A mysterious girl intervenes and says that if no one wants to join, she will. Don Juan looks at Sister Ing in surprise and asks if she really wants to join them. Ing looks at them with curiosity and some arrogance and asks if he could join their group. Don Juan begins to get nervous, not expecting such an answer. Vernon tries to persuade the girl, stating that he will give her the role of a core member of the group if she joins. Ing figures out his true intentions and notes that this whole show is just his coordinated plan. Vernon gets even angrier because all he wanted was to humiliate Jonathan, but it didn't work. Don Juan laughs and says that no one would have thought that their ice queen was so prickly. After this, he claims that together with Ing, they will definitely pass the test, no matter how serious it may be. Jonathan calmly states that he doesn't care who he's on the team with, as he'll be going through the test alone. Don Juan scratches his forehead and notes that with his strength levels, he doesn't need to strain himself at all. Ing is surprised by this attitude and notes that Jonathan has never treated others like this before, which means there is something wrong with him. Disgruntled students wonder why a scumbag like Jonathan was chosen to join the goddess Ing's team. Evelina explains that if the team is formed, she must explain to them the essence of today's challenge. They must travel to the Bone King's dungeon, and the team that gets the precious obsidian first will win. Jonathan is interested in what obsidian is and why it is so valuable. Don Juan clarifies that these are quite rare minerals that provide a chance to awaken another passive skill. Jonathan points out that in that case, they have no reason to delay and they need to hurry. Don Juan says he's worried that Vernon and his team might do something wrong, as the test is already difficult. Jonathan reassures him, noting that anyone who stands between them and the obsidian will greatly regret their choice. After some time, they finally reach the portal through which they need to go to the dungeon. The Black Rocks Island trial is an unusual dungeon filled with undead. Jonathan and his team materialize at a small intersection that looks rather ominous. He looks around and realizes that there are no other teams in sight, meaning they have been teleported to different places. Evelina decides it's time to call upon her beast, and a noble deer appears at her side. Lou decides to turn to the king of the White Wolves, who easily finds prey thanks to his abilities. Don Juan, as befits a tank, has a beast, a wild bear, which grants its owner great vitality. Ing tamed a beast, a black tiger, which is a fairly strong fighting animal. Jonathan carefully studies their characteristics and realizes that they are all pretty good fighters. He also notes that the black tiger is an S rank, meaning that Ing is indeed the strongest of his comrades. Jonathan notes that they have too many attack-type beasts and not enough defense, so he will take it upon himself. Without thinking twice, he calls on the dragon turtle to reveal itself, and it immediately appears near his comrades. Ing is surprised that he immediately summoned such a strong beast, because they need to conserve their strength. Jonathan states that this is actually the weakest beast he controls, so there is nothing to worry about. Ing nods and says that in that case they will quickly get to the necessary place. She understands that this boy is not so simple and hopes that he will not disappoint her with his actions in the future. Jonathan turns to the dragon and the turtle and orders them to move forward to lead the way. The turtle makes an angry roar, attracting a large number of skeletons. After the turtle deals with them with a blow, Lu is surprised that his defensive-type beast only waved its tail and all the enemies are destroyed. Jonathan explains that it was the effect of the turtle's spikes, which return damage. Evelina is surprised by such incredible power, noting that with its help one can cross the entire outer border without any problems. Ing declares that they have hung out long enough and it is time to move on to serious matters. After this, she gives the command to her black tiger to rush into battle and destroy the advancing enemies. The same thing happens with a giant bear, which easily cuts up worthless skeletons. Evelina addresses her allies and informs them that she will use her spirit beast's skills to strengthen them. Jonathan watches his turtle grow stronger, realizing that the deer was more useful than he thought. Smiling, he realizes that with such a beast, leveling up would go much faster. A strong earthquake begins, causing the students to become nervous. Evelina discovers that the earthquake is caused by an approaching army of skeletons. Her fears are justified, as the skeletons are clad in powerful armor and armed. Jonathan turns to the dragon turtle and she nods, understanding what she needs to do in this situation. Unknown warriors watch the events unfold, explaining that the army simply decided to fight for the obsidian. Don Juan notes that these enemies brought the monsters here on purpose to provoke them. Evelina worriedly reports that the skeletons have VK skills, and with such numbers they will simply be blown to pieces. Ing recommends that everyone step back and says that she will deal with the enemies herself. After this, she summons her monster, a thunder snake, which has incredible damage output. Evelina watches the beast in shock, realizing that she has never seen something so powerful. Lu sighs with relief and loudly announces that they are now saved and don't have to worry. The thunder snake decides to demonstrate its incredible power by instantly erupting streams of thunderous energy. Jonathan now understands why Vernon was so furious when he saw her on his team, because she really is very strong. However, these skills will still not be enough to destroy so many skeletons in a short time. In order to somehow help his allies, he decides to use the skill of icy fog. With incredible ease, he creates a snowy area in which the skeletons are instantly covered in a thick layer of ice. Evelina watches what is happening in surprise and wonders why the skeletons suddenly froze. Lu suggests that it's all because of their older sister's skills, who is incredibly strong in her magic. Ing states that the freezing radius of this skill is at least 50 meters, which is beyond her capabilities. Don Juan emphasizes that such a skill is only available to his brother, since only a strong man like Jonathan is capable of this. Evelina wonders how one can obtain such a powerful skill at level 13. Jonathan notes that he was simply lucky. Of course, no one will believe such a thing, and Evelina says that he simply has no conscience. Don Juan continues to be proud of Jonathan, as if he had something to do with it, noting that his brother will conquer everyone. Jonathan states that it is time to move on, otherwise they will lose to other teams if they stand still. Don Juan turns to his brown bear again and orders him to tear apart the remnants of the enemy army. The powerful creature rushes forward, destroying the pitiful skeletons and crushing them with its impressive weight. Smiling, he turns to his older brother and informs him that he has paved the way for him. Jonathan goes ahead, as they have no reason to linger here. After some time, they find themselves in a completely different biome, which, however, is no less dangerous. Evelina notices that there are too many toxic fumes in this forest, and it is becoming dangerous to be here. Jonathan shares her concern and asks if anyone nearby has any equipment or an anti-poison potion. Lu says that if he had known about this in advance, he would have taken such things with him. But now he has nothing. Vernon appears from the thick fog and asks why they are in such a hurry, hinting that they don't have an antidote. Don Juan addresses Vernon sternly, advising him to go where he was going and not to be distracted by them. Vernon asks why they are in such a hurry, suggesting that they really don't have an antidote. After this, he offers them a deal according to which Jonathan will call him master, and he will give everyone the antidote. Jonathan asks if he really has any extra antidote to share. Vernon glares at him and hints that he is ready to take it away, suggesting a possible fight. Jonathan smiles and explains that he is not used to refusing such offers, because they do not want to appear ungrateful. Vernon warns that if Jonathan wants to take the antidote, he must try, but not choke on the poison. Jonathan looks at his opponent proudly, noting that he asked for this fight. Without thinking twice, he turns to his mystical beast Fae and commands it to appear in this world. The creature reappears in the material world, striking everyone with its very specific appearance. Ing instantly recognizes the formidable representative of myths and legends and tries to understand how Jonathan was able to tame him. Evelina also looks at her comrade in surprise, assuming that he has even more SSS-ranked beasts. Lu suspects he is hiding more animals and begins to doubt their safety. Don Juan takes this literally and tries to attack with all his might, while Lu begs for mercy. Jonathan turns to his beast and orders it to take all of Vernon's pills that he has. Vernon is indignant, but it is too late because the beast is too fast to catch. 5 minutes later, the obedient animal brings a bag with a considerable number of pills. Jonathan thanks him for his excellent work and strokes him where the animal loves the most. After this, he approaches the team and announces that he will give 1 pill to each team member. Don Juan raises his hand and praises his comrades, noting that he is the kindest. Jonathan states that even if Vernon got here, the other teams should be close by. After this, he again turns to the mystical beast Fae and orders him to clear the way forward for them. Ing looks closely at Jonathan and asks why he didn't take the poison pill. Jonathan calmly explains that he and his beasts have a passive ability that makes them immune to all debuffs. Ing is surprised that he has another passive skill and realizes that he is stronger than she thought. Taina smiles slyly, realizing that the situation is becoming more and more interesting as time goes on. After a long time of wandering, they finally emerge from the poisonous forest and find themselves in open country. Don Juan is glad that the air is now at least clean and notes that he can now breathe deeply without fear. However, after a few moments, they begin to hear strange sounds that do not bode well. Jonathan climbs a tree and notices that the people who set the skeletons on them are facing a giant monster. Don Juan says that if they meet them right now, they will start a real fight. Jonathan advises him to take his time, emphasizing that he can deal with such problems alone. Right after that, he decides to take proper aim and use the Soul Rip skill. The enemy, unaware of the sudden attack, falls victim to this skill. His comrade warns him to be careful as they are being ambushed. The giant skeleton has no idea about the intrigues going on between the squads and simply attacks everything in sight. One of the group members wonders why their comrade suddenly fell. Don Juan takes this closer and expresses joy that his adversary got what he deserved. The criminal overhears the conversation and wonders if this is the work of some students. Jonathan turns to the leader of this group and says that in his place he would look back. The skeleton decides not to waste time and attacks the remaining members of the group. Jonathan encourages his comrades to pay attention to such scum and move on. Lu hears the pleading cries of the remaining creditors, but their fate is sealed. After some time, they reach the deep regions of Black Rocks Island, where a huge castle is located. Don Juan notes that they have finally reached the boss's lair and advises them to look around to avoid falling into a trap. Approaching the main character, he declares that they support any of his decisions as true comrades. Lu agrees with Don Juan's ideas, saying that they will simply follow him so as not to be left behind. Jonathan suggests splitting up to clear the area of monsters faster and meet up in the same place after a while. His team resolutely agrees, as they understand his instructions perfectly and intend to act without mistakes. 20 minutes later, Lu reports that the eastern part of the territory contains only small monsters, although there are a lot of them. Don Juan warns that there are 2 leaders in the western part, so it is better not to go there to avoid serious damage. Ing notes that there are almost no monsters in the southern part, so you can go there to scout out the situation. Jonathan notices that Evelina still hasn't returned and tries to figure out where she went. Evelina quickly appears and announces that she has important news. She fearfully explains that they must run after her, as their fellow students have clashed with the Fey Kingdom. Don Juan curses these opponents and asks Jonathan's permission to deal with them. Jonathan is interested in what the situation is like in the northern part of the castle and whether there are any serious enemies there. Evelina says that there is no need to worry about this, since they have cleared out all the monsters in this part. Jonathan states that in this case they will not hesitate and suggests moving as a team. Meanwhile, students from the Fey Kingdom continue their fierce battle with the Academy students. Don Juan approaches a group of fighting students and asks why they are fighting. Jonathan notices that these people are probably arguing about who will be the first to enter the castle and kill the boss. Don Juan points out that the students have started to lose ground, so it's worth intervening and helping them. Jonathan decides not to get involved in such conflicts, noting that they can cope without him, and he will take care of his tasks. Don Juan understands that if his brother smiles, It means that all ill-wishers are in danger. He then rushes forward towards the crowd of people intending to intervene. Sneaking into the boss's lair, Jonathan encounters a giant skeleton clad in powerful armor. Jonathan decides to analyze it and discovers that the skeleton has serious defensive abilities. He understands that even high-level tamers have a hard time dealing with him, but today he is unlucky because he is the coolest. Immediately after this, he summons his beasts in full force, providing an advantage in battle. Shintan rushes into battle with determination, preparing to decapitate the monster with one blow. However, nothing works, and the skeleton tries to call for help, but Jonathan is sure that he will not succeed. Taking aim, he uses the Soul Rip skill to weaken the enemy. This attack is incredibly successful, and Shinchan deals 13,000 true damage. The Skeleton King is defeated and Jonathan is rewarded with obsidian. Jonathan carefully studies the description, which states that the stone requires level 20 to use. He realizes that this is a small problem and decides to put the stone in his inventory for safekeeping. Suddenly, his victorious thoughts are interrupted by a loud knock on the closed gate, and he realizes that he has guests. To avoid being noticed, he decides to use disguise and slowly hides in the throne room. Representatives of the Fey Kingdom, who won the battle with the Dragon Empire and quietly made their way here, come here. They note with surprise that the boss should be here, but his traces have disappeared, as if he had never been here. One of them suddenly discovers traces of a battle, claiming that someone had definitely been here before them. The gang leader claims that it was definitely representatives of the Dragon Empire who deceived them. His colleague adds that they have no choice but to return and deal with the remaining enemies, taking the obsidian. Jonathan suddenly breaks out of disguise, noting that such plans seem too serious for people who don't understand who they are dealing with. The hooligans point out that if he wants to live, he must lay down the obsidian himself. After this, Jonathan calls upon his beasts, emphasizing that otherwise there will not be a hair left of him. He states that this was a serious challenge, and then summons his beasts, which are much stronger than these opponents. The hooligans realize that they will have to fight an SSS-ranked beast and realize that they simply don't stand a chance. One of the bandits notes that they are allies of fraternal countries, so there is no need to resort to violence. Jonathan agrees that they are right about this, because it is just a test and violence is not necessary. Hearing this, the opponents express gratitude and bow, demonstrating their appreciation for the leniency shown. Jonathan believes that letting them go so easily would be too soft and decides to destroy the enemy. Xingtian rushes forward, swinging his arms, leaving no chance for the enemy's spirit beasts. Jonathan smiles and explains that this is his parting gift to such dear guests. Feeling deeply humiliated, one of the gang members remarks that he will pay for this. Meanwhile, we move outside the castle to find out how the brutal battle between the two countries ended. Jonathan approaches his comrade and asks if they have made a truce. Don Juan explains that the enemy state itself proposed to end the conflict, noting that this is suspicious. Ing turns to Jonathan and asks where he went and what he was doing all this time. Jonathan smiles and says that they need to leave, adding that he will tell them everything on the way. After this, the group goes through the portal together to return to the university grounds. Don Juan notices that Jonathan has suddenly become taciturn, suspecting that he has obsidian. Jonathan smiles and the system passes the test, causing the enemy group members to freeze in surprise. One of them notes that they just stood at the gate and made a truce, which means that someone entered the dungeon before them. His opponent chuckles and explains that the truce was used as a cover since their friend had already found the secret passage. The Dragon Empire fighter calls this incredible meanness and treachery on their part. A member of the enemy team adds that this is a military stratagem that should not be neglected. Jonathan looks at them and emphasizes that they need to act more sensibly, because they have already been put in a difficult position. The angry summoner asks how Jonathan allowed this to happen. Jonathan grins and reports that their comrade, who was supposed to infiltrate the castle, is not with them now. A soldier from the Fey group confirms that everything has already been completed, and that this man has indeed disappeared somewhere. Don Juan laughs, saying that this man could have reformed, but the skeleton simply smeared him across the wall. Members of the Fey faction note that these people from the Dragon Empire were inside even before the truce. A senior gang member suggests that it was quite possible that they were behind it and that they bear full responsibility. After that, he asks what exactly the freaks did to their comrade, expecting slow answers. Jonathan claims that he did not even lay a finger on their comrade, as it was not in his area of interest. His opponent loses his temper, claiming that if he doesn't want to talk, they'll beat everything out of him by force. Evelina is alarmed and shouts at Jonathan to be more careful. Jonathan notices a giant eagle appearing out of nowhere and wonders if it is tired of life. At the same moment, he summons his heavenly dragon, which has a much stronger attack. Just moments later, the dragon erupts into a giant wall of fire, destroying everything instantly. Ing is surprised by another top-tier beast, realizing that Jonathan has a whole zoo. Jonathan asks his opponents why they are frozen in place, noting that he doesn't care if they all attack at the same time. His opponents look at him angrily and declare that he will definitely pay for this. Don Juan kneels before Jonathan, showering him with compliments and admiration. Lu joins in the compliments, noting that he would like to follow a man like Jonathan for the rest of his life. Evelina tries to calm them down, explaining that it's time to go back and they don't have time for something like this. Jonathan turns around abruptly and calls for his comrades to follow him, saying that he has an idea. Vernon watches them all this time, wondering how much he can be happy, because it won't last long. After some time, they arrive at the Academy's assembly hall to discuss what happened. Evelina asks if Jonathan really killed the guy who broke into the hall with the boss's room. Jonathan smiles and explains that this is simply impossible, because he is a man of the kindest soul. Don Juan watches Jonathan's words and notes that if he hadn't seen him tearing everyone apart, he would even believe it. Ing asks in surprise where this man went, because his skills could deal with any opponent. Jonathan claims that he did not touch anyone and decided to destroy the beasts that the opponents possessed in order to not create unnecessary problems. He reminds them that they were the first to insult their empire, and he taught them a well-deserved lesson. Don Juan admires Jonathan's incredible skills, noting that he is smart, strong, cunning, and cool. Lu adds that their success is based on the animals, and if they lose their pets, they will become nothing. Ing points out that their main candidate has suffered, and such an act will certainly not go unnoticed. Jonathan chuckles and says he's interested to see if these people have the guts. The headmaster of the Heavenly Dragon Academy, Clifford, enters the assembly hall, and it is immediately clear from his appearance that he is worried about something. Jonathan and his comrades greet the director, bowing their heads respectfully in greeting. Clifford reports that he has already reviewed the test report, adding that the students did a great job and showed their best side. After this, he turns his attention to Jonathan, saying that he deserves special praise. Jonathan realizes that he has come into the director's sights, who must have seen what was happening during the test. After this, Clifford states that he swears that these people deliberately provoked Jonathan to respond. He adds that it was a matter of honor for their dragon empire, and he could not remain silent in the face of the insult. Clifford explains that it's nothing and there's no need to worry so much about what happened. Jonathan looks at the director in surprise and asks if there really is nothing serious about it. Clifford claims that their neighbors have long been insolent, and he acted wisely by knocking them down a peg. Jonathan notes that the opponents will certainly not let this go, but Clifford assures him that he can sort everything out. Jonathan thanks the director for his assistance, then turns and leaves. Wendy comes out from behind the veil and asks him what he thinks of Jonathan, to which he replies that it is a blessing for the people. Wendy agrees and notes that Jonathan is still too weak and needs to develop in order to hold on to the Empire's future. Clifford says that next time he will give a more difficult task so that Jonathan can level up even more. Meanwhile, we return to the back of the academy, where Jonathan is heading. Jonathan finds himself in the university's training area for the first time, realizing that it is an impressive sight. Since all academies collect all sorts of dungeons with monsters to level up students, he will find something to profit from here. Looking around, he carefully searches for an opportunity to go to the rarest dungeons. After some time, he finds himself in front of a dungeon in the forest of wood demons, who are quite difficult opponents. The students here are surprised that a level 13 newbie would go into a dungeon with level 18 monsters on his own. Some of them come to the conclusion that the freshman simply overestimated himself and will soon end up covered in dirt. Jonathan doesn't pay attention to such prejudices, because even in his first fight with such opponents, it is enough for him to simply enter the forest. Shinchan and the dragon turtle appear behind their master and prepare to attack. Most of the enemies in this forest prove to be little challenge to the great axe of Xingtian. Jonathan moves forward and reaches the boss who needs to be analyzed. The Wood Demon King's stats are at a decent level, making him a worthy opponent to fight against. Jonathan notices that the enemy is trying to absorb the energy of the earth. To prevent this, he orders Xingtian to cut down the monster's roots, stripping it of its power. The mighty giant rushes forward, swinging his axe and cutting through the roots in a matter of moments. The Wood Demon King realizes he only has one chance to deal with this brat once and for all. Jonathan, meanwhile, decides to launch a preemptive strike against his opponent using a soul rupture. The monster dies fairly quickly without causing any serious damage and leaves behind a scroll. Jonathan immediately collects his rewards, trying to figure out what he managed to get this time. This time he got a scroll that improves the Tamer's skills, which means he can now summon another beast. All other students in the training hall receive a notification that the Wood Demon King has been killed. The students watching the scene cannot believe that some young man completed the dungeon in just 12 minutes. From the point of view of others, this man seems like a god among men, since no one can boast of such results. Jonathan emerges from the portal, and everyone around him is surprised that he dealt with his opponents so quickly and easily. The girls nearby order everyone else to detain him and not let him escape. Jonathan steps back from the approaching crowd, wondering what is going on here. Within moments, a huge number of girls announce that if he doesn't have a girlfriend, they wouldn't mind taking her place. Jonathan realizes that this is not what he signed up for, and he is interested in completely different things. The girls suddenly turn to the director and ask what he is doing here. One of the girls turns around, trying to understand the situation, and Jonathan decides to immediately take advantage of this. A moment later, the angry girls realize that this handsome guy took advantage of the situation and deceived them. Jonathan quickly runs further into the forest so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Stopping by the tree, he wonders why everyone is so excited and starting to pay so much attention to him. However, now nothing is stopping him, and he can safely use the scroll to improve his skills. Using the scroll, he checks his stats and realizes that they have increased significantly. However, this is not the most important thing, because now he can finally summon the 5th beast to his collection. By activating his skills, he uses the ability to summon a new monster, creating new energy fluctuations. Jonathan is in a state of incredible anticipation, wondering what kind of animal he will get next. The silhouette of a giant toad begins to appear in the air, slowly croaking. Jonathan looks at his new comrade with undisguised disappointment, trying to figure out how some toad got here. According to its skills, it is an SS rank beast, but its stats are not impressive. The main point of this beast is that it buffs other beasts by 20%, heals them, and reduces damage taken. Jonathan realizes that just recently he was envious of Evelina, who had a support beast, and now he was given a golden toad. Jonathan understands that while the toad seems weak at the moment, if he continues to develop it, it will become much stronger. He suggests that in the future, after sufficient leveling, this beast will become a real treasure. After a while, we are transported to Jonathan's room, who decides to go back and rest a little. His peaceful rest is interrupted by a call from Evelina, and Jonathan asks her what happened. Evelina reports that she received news that Jonathan broke the record in the Tree Demon Dungeon. Jonathan happily notes that he didn't expect word to spread so quickly. Evelina points out that everyone is talking about it now because it's not every day you see a level 13 guy go through an 18th level dungeon. Jonathan says it's nothing special, noting that the record only earned 10 points, which is quite low. Evelina clarifies that these points can be exchanged for rare books or scrolls to improve skills. Jonathan admits that he didn't know that getting points was such an important task and thanks her for the information. Smiling, he declares that now, having understood the essence of the training, he will immediately begin farming. The next day, he heads to the training hall again to take the best dungeon. Looking around, he's glad that there are not many people here yet, which means no one will be waiting for him. He returns to the Wood Demon Forest and summons the Golden Toad, as well as Shin-chan. Turning to the giant toad, he orders it to use the inspiration skill to level itself up. The toad carries out the command, and Jonathan is pleased to notice that these skills work on him with full force. After this, he turns to Xingtian and orders him to take the vanguard, leaving one monster alive for the toad. After this, they rush into a valiant battle to fully develop the newcomer to their beast squad. After only 8 minutes, they reach the Tree Demon King without encountering any resistance along the way. Jonathan notes that the boost from the Golden Toad is actually having an effect, as they get here much faster. Xingtian rushes forward again in order to finish off this opponent as quickly as possible. Jonathan, meanwhile, tries to stop him, but it is too late. Jonathan states that they wanted to use the time feature, as they only needed to beat yesterday's record by a little bit to get the reward. Jonathan asks his summoned beast to take its time, as otherwise it will be much more difficult to break the record. Xingtian listens attentively to the protagonist's recommendations, after which he rushes to attack the still-living tree. Thanks to his powerful blows, he manages to knock down the giant creature and leave it helpless for some time. Jonathan sympathizes with the monster and notes that he shouldn't behave like that either. The time for execution arrives, and he declares that the time has come to deal with this enemy as quickly as possible. Sintan rushes forward and delivers fatal finishing blows to the boss. Jonathan receives a notification that he has finally reached level 14 and also sets a new dungeon record. Jonathan is delighted with his success, noting that at this rate he will soon be swimming in academy points. Students watching the event notice that the young man has broken his own record. Jonathan, meanwhile, returns and materializes from the portal into the real world. The girls who are nearby head towards the main character and note that he needs to be surrounded. Jonathan realizes that he is seriously at a loss, and now he will have to somehow interact with the opposite side. Resigned, he decides to accept his fate as girls rush straight towards him. They also cover him in an incredible amount of kisses, as his dungeon-crawling prowess gives him charisma. Clifford appears in the training room to save the protagonist and orders everyone to stop messing around. After this, he approaches Jonathan and asks him if everything is okay. Enraged, he reflects on how these students have lost their conscience and almost tore him to pieces. Jonathan quickly gets to his feet, declaring that he is fine, and asks the principal what he is doing there. Clifford explains that the system showed that Jonathan stopped fighting at the 8-minute mark, meaning he was using a bug to farm points. Jonathan notes that he read the rules several times, and there was nothing in them that prohibited such actions. Clifford understands that ordinary people can't break records so easily, but this guy acts like he's a monster. However, he tries to maintain a fair competitive environment and says that can no longer be done. He accuses Jonathan of constantly breaking records and getting points, noting that this is unfair to other students. He also points out that it is demoralizing to other students who came to improve. Other students claim that they are not monsters like Jonathan and cannot exploit this bug. They add that this is simply bullying and they lose motivation to work. Clifford announces that from now on, each student can only receive the report award once. Jonathan looks down, realizing that the whole world has now turned against him and forbidden him from farming. Clifford addresses the students, telling them that they can go wherever they want, and adds that Jonathan will go with them. After some time, Jonathan finds himself in the director's office and asks him what he wanted from them. Clifford claims that a new level 18 dungeon has appeared beyond the capital's southern wall, and there is danger within. The director offers Jonathan to take the team or destroy the dungeon in order to get rid of the threat. Jonathan agrees, after which Clifford informs him that he will be assigned 4 level 20 companions, including support. Jonathan states that there is no need for this as he can handle it alone. Clifford is surprised by the protagonist's determination and notes that the dungeon is quite serious. Jonathan explains that assembling a team would be too much of a hassle and that it would be much more convenient and effective to work alone. Clifford asks how confident he is to go there alone. Jonathan calmly replies that he is 100% sure, and Clifford cannot believe such fearlessness. Realizing he can't do anything about Jonathan's determination, Clifford declares that Lindsay will take him there in that case. Jonathan bows respectfully to the director, declaring that in that case he will head off to the task immediately. After some time, he reaches the southern wall of the capital, and Lindsay reports that the entrance to the dungeon is here. She also warns that such wild dungeons are extremely unpredictable, so he must be careful. Jonathan calmly moves on and claims that he won't have any problems with this dungeon. Suddenly, an unknown young man approaches them, noting that he hasn't seen Lindsay's curator for a long time. This young man is a genius tamer from another academy, but due to his arrogance, he ridicules everyone and everything. His minions claim that the Dragon Academy was probably afraid that it would be too difficult. Jonathan claims that he alone will be enough to clear this dungeon. The genius tamer immediately runs up to the protagonist and tries to assert himself, declaring that a level 14 newbie won't survive there. This tamer, named Vladimir, says that he would like to give advice to a newcomer who is just going there. After that, he warns that the cannibal dungeon is no joke, and if Jonathan goes in there, he will simply be eaten. Lindsay starts to get angry, saying that Vladimir is already crossing all boundaries with such ignorance. Vladimir smiles and declares that he does this solely out of good intentions. Afterwards, he heads into the portal, noting that it looks like the Heavenly Dragon Academy will lose its status. Jonathan turns to the curator in surprise and asks her what he meant. Lindsay explains that he's new and doesn't know anything, but the academies have always been rivals with each other. She adds that their academy has always been behind the Dragon Academy, so they are angry and look for any opportunity to assert themselves. Jonathan declares that he will not disgrace the honor of his university and assures that he can be relied upon in this matter. He also notes that he will definitely complete this dungeon before the upstarts from another academy. Lindsay charges herself with powerful motivation and faith in the protagonist, assuring him that he will succeed. Jonathan steps through the portal and finds himself inside a cannibal dungeon, which presents a beautiful and dangerous landscape. Looking around, he discovers a giant castle and realizes that, apparently, this is where he needs to go. Immediately after this, he calls upon all the beasts he has in order to be safe. Coming a little closer, he decides to give commands to the dragon turtle and the mystical poison master Faye. The golden toad must finish off the remaining mobs and buff allies as much as possible, agreeing with Jonathan's brilliant plan. After he gives everyone the necessary commands, he declares that it is time to move forward. The golden toad immediately prepares to strengthen its allies, and its body begins to glow. The dragon turtle and the mystic poison master rush forward to provoke the enemies. Jonathan also doesn't dare to stand aside and decides to cover them with the help of the skill of the single mist. Thanks to this synergy of skills, he's able to destroy entire hordes of opponents without any problems. Jonathan is amazed by the amount of experience the monsters in this dungeon give, although he knows this is just the beginning. He notes that the items given to him by the director are incredibly valuable and still help him today. After some time, he moves on, realizing that all that remains is to defeat the boss located nearby. This boss is a peacefully sleeping giant cyclops, which is actually quite aggressive and dangerous. Jonathan looks at him carefully and realizes that compared to him, Shintan seems like a small child. Jonathan decides to analyze the monster and discovers that it has extraordinary characteristics. Among other things, this monster can put a person into a state of fear, and under this effect, the beast will not be able to attack. Jonathan notes that he recently received a cleansing aura, so the monster's negative effects do not affect him. In order to awaken the monster, he decides to use the Soul Break skill. Of course, a monster that hasn't even had time to wake up properly cannot dodge a precise and accurate blow. Jonathan commands his monsters to attack together to combine all damage. His beasts actually attack in groups, complementing each other's skills. Shinchan takes the brunt of the giant enemy's blow, easily dodging to the side. After a while, his efforts against the boss are futile and he is quickly destroyed. Jonathan is surprised that only one item dropped with such a reward, but the item's characteristics make him remain silent. He understands that this is nothing more than an enhancement stone, thanks to which he will be able to significantly improve his beasts. Jonathan realizes that such a stone would be better spent on one animal, but he still doesn't understand which one would be better. A few moments later, a powerful earthquake occurs, signaling that disaster is approaching. Jonathan realizes that an even stronger beast awaits him ahead. The earthquake is accompanied by a loud roar, and a giant two-headed orc appears in front of the protagonist. Jonathan carefully examines its characteristics and realizes that he is facing a level 20 monster that will not be easy to deal with. Jonathan realizes that this time he may not be able to emerge victorious from the potential fight. The monster, meanwhile, rushes forward, swinging a huge hammer in the hopes of crushing the protagonist. However, a giant turtle comes to his aid, ready to create a protective barrier. However, one blow is enough to significantly damage the animal's health. Jonathan realizes that the monster has broken through the dragon turtle's defenses in just one blow, and now she is beginning to suffer seriously. He realizes that if he doesn't come up with something suitable, he will lose the powerful beast that has saved his life more than once. Jonathan understands that this is his main tank, and without it, he will simply die. After this, he grabs the enhancement stone, realizing that the situation leaves him no choice. He loudly declares that he wants to strengthen the dragon turtle to greatly increase its combat performance. The dragon turtle flies into the air, becoming invulnerable for a short time. The dragon turtle's development instantly passes through several stages, and the next barrier is impossible to break through. Jonathan is delighted with the improved results, realizing that his tank has now become even more impenetrable. After this, he orders the Sunset Dragon and Xingtian to help their comrade, who found himself in a difficult situation. The two beasts need no further persuasion, so they immediately rush forward to quickly destroy the monster. Jonathan says he'll take a look at his turtle's updated specs to find out. He is surprised to learn that the turtle now has incredible stamina, 55,000. Jonathan carefully adds up all the defense bonuses the turtle receives and comes to the conclusion that it blocks 70% of the damage. Meanwhile, the cannibal disaster activates Blood Rage to greatly increase its offensive stats. However, the heroic Xintian still looks at him as an unworthy opponent and waits for the moment to attack first. Seizing the moment, he rushes forward, dodging the giant ogre's swift attack. Jonathan understands that at this rate the dragon will get hit and uses the skill Ice Fog. The ogre doesn't have time to dodge the attack and is instantly covered in a crust of ice. The mystical poison master Faye comes into play, spewing a gigantic amount of poisonous mucus from his mouth. The giant ogre's body is almost completely covered in slime, but he regenerates health at a high rate. Jonathan understands that the monster has vampirism, but for some reason he forgot about it. Having prepared himself, he decides to use the Soul Rip skill again to deal mental damage. The monster doesn't have time to dodge the perfectly timed attack and again receives powerful damage. Sintan realizes that this is the perfect moment to rush back into the attack on the distracted enemy. The ogre is still preoccupied with fighting the other beasts, leaving his flank exposed. Only at the last moment does he turn around to try to fight off the attack. But it is too late. Sinchan's skill is activated, and even such a powerful enemy is destroyed in one blow. Jonathan levels up to 16 and acquires a huge amount of valuable and rare equipment. He understands that this level was achieved with great difficulty, and they survived only thanks to the skill of Xintian. Jonathan frowns at how the director could have mixed up such important information as the disaster level. Deciding to return to the academy and find out everything from the director, he quickly jumps into the portal. Lindsay asks him why he came out so quickly and looking so disheveled. She assumes that he failed the task, but notes that it is not a big deal since the dungeon is indeed difficult. Jonathan explains that he got out quickly because he completed everything and destroyed the trapeze monster. Lindsay looks at him in surprise and notes that less than an hour has passed since he completed all the tasks. Jonathan specifically emphasizes that this monster was level 20, not 18. Lindsay agrees with this information and says that the difference between the monster levels is colossal. Hugging him enthusiastically, she adds that he never ceases to amaze her and is a real miracle. Jonathan states that it is time for them to go back, as he really wants to talk to the director. After some time, they successfully return to the academy, where in the meantime, something unusual is happening. The directors of the two academies arrive to hold small talks. One of them reports that the aura has disappeared, which means that Vladimir has completed the dungeon. Their supporters claim that a true genius of their academy was involved in the matter, as he quickly dealt with the enemies. Clifford says it's shameless because there are no results yet, and they're already rushing to take all the credit. His colleague reports that they sent some level 14 newbie who couldn't win this dungeon. Clifford firmly states that words here will be superfluous, and time will tell who was right. After some time, a portal opens, and Vladimir appears from there along with his comrades who fought stubbornly. Their director notes that he knew perfectly well that the mentor would cope with this task perfectly. After this, he declares that it is time to say goodbye to the title of the best academy and accept reality. Clifford thinks hard about what could have happened and doesn't want to believe that they lost. The director approaches his pupil and asks him to show what fell from the monster of disaster. Vladimir, looking lost, reports that they did not kill this monster, and when they arrived there, it was already gone. The mentor asks questions about how such a thing is even possible and cannot believe his ears. Other students wonder if it was Jonathan, as there are simply no other options. Clifford grins, noting that apparently their geniuses are significantly inferior to even Jonathan alone. Their director notes that he simply does not believe that some newcomer of such a level is capable of such a thing. Clifford says that there is only a short wait left, because their genius will arrive here soon. An hour later, Jonathan shows up and they arrive, causing Clifford to become nervous, trying to figure out where his student is. His colleague haughtily asks if Jonathan received fatal injuries while running the dungeon. Clifford confidently asserts that this is simply impossible. Something must have delayed him. The assistant informs the director that Lindsay was recently with Jonathan, but is now nowhere to be found. He adds that they will call immediately to find out where she went, and promises that this will be done. His colleague says all 5 students returned largely unharmed. He arrogantly claims that the one who boasted that he could complete the dungeon alone is now in danger. He also notes that this automatically makes their academy a much less prestigious place to study. Suddenly, the assistant runs up to the boss and informs him that Jonathan is not dead. He is fine. Clifford is very happy about this news and asks his assistant to tell him what happened to him. The assistant reports that Jonathan destroyed the disaster an hour ago and has already returned to the academy. Clifford laughs heartily, saying that he was sure this guy wouldn't let him down. The director of the rival academy claims that this is simply impossible, since the boy could not have completed a dungeon of this level. The assistant director reports that Lindsay has further informed him that the dungeon has risen 2 more levels. Clifford is shocked by this information and asks if Jonathan is okay. The assistant replies that the boy is fine and that he didn't even have any scratches. Clifford lets out a tense breath, saying he feels like a huge weight has been lifted off his shoulders. The director of a rival academy asks Vladimir if the disaster was really level 20. Vladimir states that there is no doubt about it, adding that it was also a modified monster. Immediately after this, the directors of their academies faint, but each has their own reasons for this. After some time, Clifford comes to his senses, bursts into the academy and opens the doors with maximum force. Jonathan is already waiting for him in his office and confirms that he is fine. Clifford immediately runs to him and asks why he looks so tired if he is fine. Jonathan wearily explains that the disaster, which turned out to be level 20 and not 18 as originally promised, is to blame for everything. He begins to cry, saying that due to faulty intelligence he could have died in vain. Clifford notes that he doesn't understand why everything turned out this way, and that everything needs to be sorted out. Jonathan states that he doesn't care, as the director is obliged to compensate him for all his suffering. Clifford agrees to compensation and offers the box, asking if it will suit her. Jonathan immediately grabs the box and asks what is in it. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that these are 2 evolution stones that can improve talents and skills. After this, he begins to run around the office at incredible speed and happiness. He then closes the door behind him, saying that this was his way of preparing and he is ready to complete the task. Clifford is surprised at how quickly Jonathan moved, assuming he was just pretending before. Meanwhile, Jonathan finds himself in the forest where no one will watch him, and he can calmly try out his new toy. He reflects on the fact that Xing Tian and the Sunset Dragon are his main attack force, and this time he needs to level them up. Immediately after this, he summons his creatures into this world in order to reward them with new improvements. He advises them to prepare, after which he uses 2 stones, and the system shows him the updated stats. According to the new characteristics, without strengthening the toads, they already become much stronger, and with improvement, they will become invincible. Once he's done with that, it's time to develop his own skills. By using the scroll, he upgrades his divine inspiration talent, and now all his stats are increased 20-fold. Jonathan smiles, realizing that his future is now as bright as filtered lemonade. After this, he turns to Josie, wanting to see what has changed since he completed this dungeon. The mighty giant decides to demonstrate his new abilities in practice and raises his axe. After he deals one of the most devastating blows, a huge crack appears on the ground in history. Jonathan is very impressed by such destruction, realizing that it will be very useful to him in the future. A new day is dawning, which means it's time for new adventures. Today, he plans to try a more difficult dungeon. Jonathan starts walking forward when he is suddenly stopped by a familiar and unpleasant voice. The voice belongs to Vernon, who informs them that they have met that little brat again. The hooligans watching the events say that it is impossible to go against Vernon because his parents are rich. Jonathan notes that Vernon looks very good for a man who resembles a poisonous cockroach. Vernon orders him to go to Evelina's brother, as he wants to talk to her personally. Jonathan states that if a person wants to, he can come on his own. Those watching this express admiration for such courage, saying that they have never seen anything like it. They add that if someone refused Evelina's brother, it ended badly for him. Vernon also scolds Jonathan, saying that he has no idea who he is dealing with. Jonathan lunges forward and receives a slap on the back of the head, which prompts him to get out of the way as quickly as possible. Vernon receives an incredible amount of kinetic energy, causing him to be thrown sideways, face down. The onlooking hooligans can't believe that a man like Vernon can be thrown around like a ball. An enraged Vernon rises to his feet, saying that he will tear Jonathan to pieces for what he did. Jonathan responds by using his soul rip skill to teach the bastard a lesson. Vernon doesn't have time to dodge the blows, which is why he again finds himself in the losing position. Jonathan lands some powerful blows, after which he notices that the villains are suffering because of their own complacency. After this, he turns to the other bullies, saying that if they want to attack, they should do it at the same time. The hooligans retreat, declaring that they were just passing by and did not intend to bother them. Jonathan angrily calls them pathetic cowards and gets ready to go about his business. Vernon looks after him, saying that he will definitely remember this and will never forgive. Meanwhile, Jonathan moves through a portal where he discovers a dungeon that has not yet been completed. Without thinking twice, he rushes forward and appears in a previously unknown place. However, as soon as he materialized, a pack of bear paws headed towards him. Jonathan repels this powerful attack with a soul rupture, while simultaneously destroying the bear with a powerful clot of energy. The system notifies him that a level 19 beast has been destroyed in time. Jonathan is surprised that he was able to destroy such a high-ranking beast with just one blow. After this, he uses his analysis ability to roughly figure out where the next enemy is. Jonathan realizes that he is now so strong that he can handle even bosses, but he still decides to summon animals. Xingtian, Sunset Dragon, and Golden Toad come to his side. Jonathan continues to maintain a positive attitude and sends the rest of the dungeon creatures back for cleansing. Shinchan and his team live up to their title of the best fighter by killing everyone. But Jonathan shouts that the Toad needs to gain experience too. The Sunset Dragon is also in no hurry to listen to the protagonist's instructions and burns everyone who dares to get into his field of vision. Jonathan states that using area of effect skills is now prohibited because they destroy enemies too quickly. The Toad, watching what is happening, realizes that she will not be able to gain much experience and begins to cry. Jonathan understands that being incredibly strong, cool, powerful, handsome, and superior is a challenge in some ways. Half an hour passes and they finally finish clearing this dungeon without any problems. Jonathan turns to the Dragon Turtle and orders her to use the combat taunt key to lure out the boss. She immediately fulfills his demand, and a giant two-headed bear comes to this call. Jonathan decides to analyze this enemy and finds out that he has serious damage indicators. Jonathan immediately turns his gaze to Shintan and the dragon, wondering if they haven't played enough yet. Having received a satisfactory answer, he reflects that they must now strike these opponents with all their might. Xingtian and the Sunset Dragon rush forward, ready to have a glorious battle. Of course, the outcome of this battle is predetermined from the start, since such a creature does not have a single chance. The system congratulates the tamer Jonathan on his first pass through the Bear Ridge and gives him 1,000 coins and 10 points. Jonathan also receives a reward, an ancient key, but the system has difficulty telling what it can be used for. Jonathan realizes that this only means that there is treasure nearby and sets out to find it. However, after half an hour, he finds nothing and assumes that this key could not have appeared here just like that. Suddenly, a mysterious man appears before him and asks if he is looking for treasure. Jonathan looks at him carefully and immediately resorts to analytical skills to avoid being deceived. However, to his incredible surprise, the system reports that the characteristics of this creature, as well as its name, are unknown. Jonathan looks at him in surprise and wonders who he is and what he is doing here. This strange entity claims to be a treasure hunter like Jonathan and wanders the world. Jonathan thinks this is excellent news and asks if he has found the treasure. The strange man claims that he has found everything he needs, but in order to get to them, he needs a key. He extends his hand to Jonathan and asks him to give him the key in exchange for showing him the way. Jonathan smiles and thinks that this won't be a problem and hands over the key. The strange man praises him, saying that he has not met such smart boys for a long time. Of course, this turns out to be a trick, and Jonathan decides to use Soul Rip to cause damage. The angry man asks what the hell he is doing and what he is allowing himself to do. Jonathan furiously thinks that he is simply going to finish him off and take the treasure for himself. The man begins to get angry and thinks that the pathetic scum who doesn't know his place will be destroyed in the blink of an eye. Jonathan watches the Dark Shaman with joy and reflects on the fact that he has finally shown his true face. Looking at its characteristics, Jonathan wonders if this is all that such a formidable enemy is capable of. With a sneer, he understands why he hid his characteristics. The enraged shaman contemplates what will make him pay for the insult by calling down the flames of darkness. However, he is immediately confronted by the Dragon of Heaven, who releases incredible power in a stream of true flame. The shaman is unable to dodge the projectile, which turns out to be fatal for him. After just a few moments and a couple of blows, he falls to the ground and loses consciousness. The system notifies Jonathan that the level 21 Great Dark Shaman has been destroyed. Jonathan picks up the chest and reflects that everything happened exactly as he expected, because this creature kept the treasures with itself. After this, he decides to finally return to open the chest and enjoy the treasures. However, once he returns to the real world, an amazing surprise awaits him. Jonathan suddenly hears Josie's voice behind him, asking him if he's finished yet. He is genuinely frightened by the sudden appearance of his ally and asks her what she is doing here. Josie explains that she came here to go through the dungeon, but was delayed a little when she saw that he was here too. Jonathan shows her the dungeon he came from and muses that there is enough experience there to farm. Josie says she'll have to put those plans on hold for now, as it's impossible now. Jonathan looks at her in surprise and asks what she means. Josie states that it's easier to show than to tell and suggests they head back to the dungeon. Jonathan reaches his hand towards the portal, but the system informs him that the dungeon is on cooldown. He reflects on the fact that this is the first time he has encountered such a situation and does not understand where it came from. Josie explains that the dungeon above level 20 is different from the others and has a cooldown. Jonathan is upset and asks if he will have to wait 2 hours every time he wants to farm. Josie hands him a special wormhole sign, telling him that he should use it to speed up the process. Without thinking twice, she comes closer and tosses the small artifact right into his palms. Jonathan reflects on the fact that the charge is depleted with use and wonders what to do when it runs out. Josie states that if he runs low on energy, it can be exchanged for Academy coins or by completing quests to recover. Jonathan is wondering what badges he needs to get to use them regularly. Josie explains that beginners usually receive them automatically upon reaching level 20 and undergoing the transformation. She also clarifies that he can get a badge at the tournament, but Jonathan objects, because the tournament is tomorrow. Josie explains that if he's worried about not being able to register in time, she can easily arrange that. Jonathan thanks her and reflects on how much he wants to participate in the tournament. Immediately after this, he returns to the dorm to finally open the chest with incredible treasures. Holding the treasured key in his hands, he hopes that something incredible will fall out, or at least good items. After inserting the key into the keyhole and turning it several times, he finally gains access to the treasure. The system gives him a map of an ancient cache, which could be very useful to him in future endeavors. However, he cannot use it because he needs to go through the first transformation to do so. Jonathan is surprised by the level restriction, but muses that he'll go there later anyway. The next day, he is transported to the arena of the newcomers tournament, where the battles promise to be exciting. Josie explains that the top 3 participants received the wormhole badge, so there is nothing to worry about. Jonathan reflects that he is absolutely calm and will take first place in the tournament. Josie smiles, thinking that she almost forgot that he was an actual monster. She also advises him to be careful, as he may end up facing senior students as opponents. Jonathan looks at her in surprise and asks why the tournament rules are set up this way. Josie explains that the seniors give the new students a show of spanking to encourage their development. Jonathan turns away and reflects that such rules seem crazy to him. However, he understands that there is common sense in this, because you have to look hard to find such a cunning director. Josie laughs and remarks that only he can afford to speak in such a manner, after which he advises not to be afraid. Meanwhile, the seniors enter the arena, thinking that it's time to show the newcomers their place. The main one thinks that all these idiots will run to their mother before the real fighting begins. Jonathan attracts their attention because he became the best student in the exam. However, they are not impressed by his achievements, since for them he is just another newcomer and easy prey. After a while, the director comes into the arena to greet the students and announce the start of the tournament. Clifford addresses the students and reminds them of the tournament rules that they will need to follow. According to the rules, battles take place in randomly formed teams, and each second-year student puts in points and coins. He also explains that if a freshman wins, he takes all the bets for himself. A fighter named Luther steps forward, betting 5,000 coins and 50 points, and then waits for those willing to fight. After he announces his level, the other freshmen decide not to take unnecessary risks. Even senior students understand that they can get beaten up, so it's better not to interfere. Luther reflects that no one wants to challenge him and concludes that the current freshmen are weak. Suddenly, another young man enters the arena and declares that he is ready to test his luck. He introduces himself as Gunther and explains that he is also a power-type Tamer. Jonathan is amazed at his progress, realizing that they haven't seen each other for only a week, and he's already improved so much. Luther thinks that in this case they will not waste time and calls upon one of his beasts. The first to enter the arena is a level 25 power beast, a powerful burner. Luther explains that he will not summon other beasts, but if his beast loses, the reward will go to him. Gunther reflects that the second-year student will still pay for such insolence and disregard. He summons several of them at once as his beasts and prepares to use their numerical advantage. Josie immediately realizes who will emerge victorious from this battle, as Gunther doesn't stand a chance. Jonathan muses that there's nothing he can do about it, as the level caps the maximum level of beasts. Gunther still hasn't given up and is preparing to give his opponent an equal fight. His indomitable beasts immediately rush forward to impress the senior with their power. Luther carefully controls every movement and orders the furious Gore to perform a spirit strike. The giant ape-like monster immediately begins to beat his chest with his hands. Such a blow reverberates across the entire arena, causing the giant ant to immediately lose its combat ability. Gunther looks at his beasts in surprise and realizes that they have been hit by a wave of stun, preventing them from attacking. Luther advises him not to worry, explaining that he merely stunned his beasts with some attack. Immediately after this, he decides to use the created day strike skill to deal with the beasts. Burner takes advantage of the moment and rushes forward, carefully aiming at the giant, clumsy bear. Still recovering from the collapse, the bear becomes an easy target for a brutal lunge that hits him right in the head. A few moments later, the bear receives injuries incompatible with life and falls. Gunther almost immediately falls to his knees, admitting his defeat and declaring that he will no longer resist. After some time, the academy staff comes out with a stretcher to evacuate him from the arena. The observing senior students noted that he was an incredible weakling, since they had once been much stronger. Luther looks at the other fighters and asks them who will dare to challenge him. The girls watching him understand that they are clearly not rivals, and there is no point in even trying. Luther continues to egg the crowd on, claiming that he can fight even stronger freshmen. Other students become irritated by how blatantly they are being bullied and not given the opportunity to fight back. Jonathan calmly rises from his seat and reflects on the fact that he is ready to take on the challenge and try his hand. Luther happily reflects on the fact that their much-rumored champion has finally appeared. Jonathan suggests that he stop chatting and get straight to the point so that he can fight as quickly as possible. Luther asks him if he is really that well prepared, since he has a beast of the highest rank. Having shown him his dissatisfaction, he reflects on the fact that even the strongest beasts will not save a weak tamer. After some time, he summons a fiery lion to the battlefield, which is also a beast of the highest rank. Jonathan decides that a demon will represent him in this fight and immediately summons one. The observing students notice that the beast looks incredibly powerful and beautiful. Despite this, the difference in level turns out to be too great, and few are willing to bet on the main character. Luther ponders what will give him a chance, suggesting to summon another beast, otherwise the hero will definitely not cope. Jonathan states that this is not necessary, since even one beast is enough to deal with the enemy. Luther is amazed at the boy's impudence and thinks that now he shouldn't complain. Turning to the enraged gorilla, he orders her to use the spirit strike again to stun Jonathan. The wild beast lets out another powerful cry, but is unaware that Jonathan is immune to such attacks. Without moving a muscle, he orders his dragon to incinerate the enemy before him. The giant monster obeys Jonathan's will and rushes forward, letting out a powerful roar. Luther is amazed and asks himself how his beast can move. Jonathan reflects that cheap tricks won't work on him. Immediately after this, he orders his dragon to tear the monkey to pieces. The monkey proves to be too slow to deal with the flying dragon. The dragon easily surrounds her and wraps its incredibly strong body around her, forming a death grip. After a while, the dragon coils completely, destroying the monkey, and Luther falls to his knees. The enraged spellcaster orders the fiery lion to kill the dragon immediately. The lion performs an attack, dealing 600 damage, but it is not enough. The high school students notice that their friend has greatly overestimated himself. The dragon decides to strike back, throwing the fiery lion far away. The beast deals a whopping 6d666 damage, enough to send an enemy to the next world. Luther is incredibly displeased as two of his best beasts have just been destroyed in the blink of an eye. However, this turns out not to be the biggest problem, because the dragon that is hovering in the air now has its sights set on him. Jonathan wonders whether Luther will surrender on his own, or whether he will beat a confession of strength out of him. Jonathan grins, realizing that his dragon is capable of frying an opponent to a state corresponding to the maximum level. Luther realizes that there is nothing to catch him here, and reflects on the fact that he accepts his defeat. His classmates mockingly remark that he actually gave up, despite the large difference in levels. Vernon, watching the proceedings, understands that the second years are celebrating too early because Jonathan is still expecting victory. Clifford speculates that there is a pretty clear winner in this fight, and there is no doubt about it. After a dramatic pause, he announces that the protagonist is receiving an award. After this, he suggests that Jonathan leave the arena, but Jonathan thinks that there is no point in walking back and forth. After this, he challenges all the second years, asking who else is willing to demonstrate their power. Ing chuckles and reflects on how this guy is not playing by the rules at all and is going against the system. Jonathan continues to observe the second years and believes that they are currently quite weak. Clifford notes that young people have incredible courage, which he, unfortunately, has to take into account. After a while, another young man emerges from the crowd, ready to challenge Jonathan. Vernon begins to joke, thinking that this newcomer will finally encounter real power. The other sophomores think it's high time this guy was put in his place for his incredible insolence. His opponent acknowledges Jonathan's strength and endurance, but Jonathan turns this into a joke. At that moment, the second-year students are shocked, thinking that such a talkative newcomer needs to be put in his place. Jonathan states that his bet is also 5,000 coins and 50 points to make things fair. A nearby arena employee proudly hits the giant beast's head with a hammer. Immediately after this, Jonathan's opponent uses the beast subjugation skill. Only a few moments pass, and his target turns out to be a heavenly dragon, which has no time to counter. Before Jonathan can figure out what to do, the dragon suddenly disappears, leaving behind only an empty space. Jonathan is under a debuff, so it can't be cleansed, which means it breaks his incredible passive. His opponent laughs, thinking that it was a coincidence and his dragon was sealed by coincidence. After this, the opponent asks Jonathan to kneel down, call him grandfather, and ask for forgiveness, believing that then he will feel better. Jonathan states that this will never happen and he can only rely on his own strength. His opponent starts laughing, thinking that in this case he expects maximum effort from him. Jonathan rushes forward and uses Soul Rip to deal psychic damage to the enemy. However, the opponent only laughs, thinking that today is really a good day. Jonathan is shocked and looks at his opponent in surprise, not believing that he was not at all hurt by such a powerful attack. He explains that he prepared armor against spiritual attacks in advance, and if necessary, it makes him invulnerable. Jonathan wonders how this man knew about his skill, but quickly realizes the rest of the situation is obvious. He looks at Vernon, thinking that he must have told him all the information. Vernon, in turn, makes disapproving gestures, thinking that now his opponent cannot escape. Jonathan begins to chase, realizing that this opponent should have been destroyed last time. His opponent says it's time to stop messing around and that he should give in. Jonathan wonders if the enemy is really that dangerous and thinks he can scare him. The senior student reflects that he will not tolerate people who dare to oppose him even in death. After this, he adds that such youths are just an appetizer for Jonathan, which he can eat without any problems. Jonathan then summons his spirit beast, a giant tiger emitting red energy. The observing students believe that without the beast, Jonathan will have a very hard time holding out and that defeat will be guaranteed. However, Jonathan suddenly disappears, and his opponent tries to figure out where the enemy is. Jonathan suddenly appears behind the annoying senior and advises him to turn around as quickly as possible. As soon as he carries out the command, Jonathan gives him a powerful slap in the face. Once on the ground, Jonathan orders the white tiger to pounce on the victim and tear it to pieces. Jonathan anticipates this development and heads towards the tiger using his ice fog skill. He manages to seal the tiger in an icy tomb without any problems, rendering it immobile. Jonathan reflects that such events can be considered luck, but everything happens according to his plan. Approaching the frozen opponent, he gives him another slap and orders him to get lost. The enemy tries to get up and asks how Jonathan dared to treat his animals like that. Jonathan immediately rushes into attack and wonders if the enemy allows the summoning of new beasts. After knocking him to the ground, Jonathan begins to punch him in the face, but his opponent still does not give up. Jonathan states that in this case he will continue the fight until the opponent surrenders or loses consciousness. Quite a long time passes, but the high school student realizes that life is more precious to him than anything else, and he announces that he is giving up. Jonathan commends him for his prudence, then points out that this is where he should have started, and then orders him to leave. His opponent tries to get up, but Jonathan decides to carry out a brutal finishing move, delivering a powerful kick to the helpless opponent. Students watching this wonder whether such behavior should be tolerated in the arena. Jonathan ignores such questions and asks the others if there are any more people willing to fight. Looking at Vernon, he wonders if he has the courage to try his luck. Vernon reports that it looks like his mother is calling him to dinner, so he should leave as soon as possible. High school students are wondering where the justice is, because they were beaten up in their first year, and now nothing has changed. Due to the lack of volunteers, Jonathan is declared the winner of the tournament, receiving a wormhole symbol, 10,000 coins, and 50 points. Josie realizes that Jonathan is very strong, after which she begins to feel an incredible desire to be as close to him as possible. Meanwhile, she is transported to a spatial place where Jonathan decides to go to the Bare Ribs again. He wonders what treasures he will get this time, when suddenly someone unexpectedly puts a hand on his shoulder. Jonathan quickly turns around and sees Josie, who reproaches him for being absent-minded. She also accuses him of sending her down several levels to help him level up. Jonathan notes that this dungeon is quite difficult, and they will have to act as harmoniously as possible. Josie starts making eyes at him and hints that otherwise she will choose a different path, to which Jonathan agrees. After a while, Gunther runs up to him, declaring that he is extremely impressed by his performance and now considers him his idol. Jonathan says there's no point in getting involved, but agrees to go with him. Gunther offers payment, but Jonathan points out that it is not necessary as he no longer needs the money. Gunther remembers his recent victory and realizes that such pennies are of no interest to him. Jonathan says that Gunther is thinking too much and offers to go together, stating that he will lead them to a powerful dungeon. Jonathan chooses the Nightmare Dungeon difficulty, and Josie tries to stop him before it's too late. Jonathan turns around and asks what happened. Josie explains that this is a mid-level dungeon and the monsters there will be incredibly strong for such a difficulty. Jonathan asks her what the problem is, to which she replies that he chose the Nightmare difficulty. Jonathan smiles and notes that there is no need to worry about this because these monsters are not that strong. Gunther says he didn't expect such strength from his new boss and wants to gain at least a modicum of confidence. Josie advises him to get organized, as these dungeons are designed for multiple teams. Gunther wonders if it's really that hard, then remembers that someone has done it alone. Josie states that this is absurd, as it is impossible to get through such a dungeon alone. Jonathan realizes that rumors are already circulating about him and hopes to receive as much praise as possible. Josie asks why he's smiling so strangely, reminding her that he's supposed to be covering for her. Jonathan turns away and says that he is now heading into the portal so as not to be late. Just a few moments pass, and they find themselves in an unknown location on the other side of the world. Giant cannibals, resembling overgrown gray goblins, begin to run towards them. Josie analyzes them carefully and notices that even such simple opponents will have good stats. Jonathan recommends staying close to him, as these enemies can deal serious damage. Stepping forward, he raises his hand to activate his summoning ability. He decides to summon all his beasts as his main striking force, realizing that he is now responsible for his friends. Gunther is surprised that Jonathan was able to summon 4 top beasts at once, since with their help one can even rob the Imperial Temple. Josie notes that they haven't seen each other for only a few days, and he's already acquired new pets. Jonathan sends Shinchan forward, ordering him to destroy any enemies he encounters along the way. After that, he leaves them a couple of opponents so that they can at least participate a little. Josie feels a little awkward and notes that Jonathan is indeed a generous soul. Nevertheless, they decide to join him and order the animals to cover them. Gunther watches his animals closely, confident that they will emerge from this ordeal much stronger than they were before. Shintan continues to fight at his usual pace, not really feeling the presence of powerful opponents. Watching Jonathan's animals, he realizes that they are much more effective and even feels a little envious. Jonathan thanks them for their efforts, saying that they should move on now that they have almost reached their goal. After some time, they finally reach the cannibals' fortress, which is guarded quite carefully. Josie notes that there are quite a lot of them here, clearly at least 100, and possibly more than 200. Jonathan explains that this is not surprising, since the dungeon is of medium level and will be more difficult to complete. He states that they will only need to defend themselves, and his team will take care of the rest. Gunther asks if Jonathan really decided to go to such a place with so many enemies. Jonathan explains that this is the tactic he chose and orders the toad to activate its Inspire skill. The beast carries out a command, after which other fighters on the team are incredibly strengthened for a long time. They rush forward, sweeping away hordes of opponents in literally seconds and leaving no chance for the enemies. Gunther is surprised that this man has a beast that significantly improves the team without causing direct damage. Josie wonders if Faye's skill has always been this strong and dealt this much damage. Gunther notes that the reason for the increase lies in the characteristics of the animals. Josie realizes that she has received a boost in the form of a doubling of her stats. Meanwhile, the Sky Dragon continues to patrol the battlefield, covering it almost completely with fire. Josie assumes she's simply gaining a huge amount of experience. Gunther says he couldn't have imagined such progress even in his wildest dreams. Jonathan feels like a fish in water in the dungeon, realizing that he can cope alone. Josie irritably remarks that she doesn't know how to act in this place and must follow him. Jonathan uses the One Mist skill and suddenly notices Josie behind him, watching him closely. Josie notes that she suspects Jonathan of being the one who went through this dungeon alone. Jonathan chuckles and states that it could only have been him. Gunther notes that Jonathan is incredibly strong and he is amazed by his power. Josie asks why he didn't report it right away when she couldn't find him. After some time, they enter the fortress, where they meet another enemy of a higher rank. Josie notes that this powerful ogre troll has incredible stats, and they are unlikely to cope. Gunther feels a little uneasy and asks Jonathan how he managed to get here alone. Jonathan explains that fear is just an illusion, and if you don't give it too much energy, everything will be fine. Immediately after this, he orders his beasts and Xingtian rushes forward. The team's main fighter instantly carries out the command and grabs his giant axe. Taking aim, he delivers a devastating attack, instantly reducing the enemy's health to 0. Gunther watches the giant's power in horror and cannot believe his eyes. Josie feels irritated as she sees how the once insignificant animals have suddenly become powerful. Gunther warns that if he ever doubts Jonathan, Josie should be as strict with him as possible. Josie confirms that Jonathan doesn't have to worry because she's always there to support him. After some time, they complete tasks in the dungeon and return back. The system congratulates Jonathan's team by awarding serious bonuses in the form of points and coins. Jonathan is surprised by the reward he received, thinking that it is only 1,000 coins and 10 points. Gunther and Josie look at him disapprovingly and ask if he understands how hard it is to earn these points. Jonathan claims he's never had a problem with this and agrees to provide the score. He modestly notes that he was only able to earn 380 points. Josie and Gunther are in shock. Jonathan still doesn't understand their surprise, assuming it's not that big of a figure. Josie explains that 35% of students don't even score in the 100s by the time they graduate. She criticizes Jonathan for only trying for a week and already getting almost 400 points. Gunther enthusiastically hugs Jonathan and declares that he is now like an older brother and even a father to him, begging him to guide him. Jonathan pushes him aside, saying that he is not interested in his comrades. Immediately after this, Jonathan says that his sister Evelina told him that glasses are a pass to elite establishments. Jonathan asks what kind of place this is, and Gunther is surprised that the all-powerful Jonathan doesn't know everything. Jonathan advises him to stop talking nonsense and tell him everything he knows about such establishments. Gunther understands that he simply cannot withstand another blow and declares that with the help of these glasses he can get into the abode. Jonathan touches his chin thoughtfully, then asks what this place is. Gunther explains that the abode is a place where many rare items and equipment are located, and the higher the floor, the more points you need to get there. Jonathan realizes that the offer looks quite interesting and decides to definitely take a look there. Josie notes that he is celebrating too soon because the glasses are just a pass, and without coins he won't be able to buy anything anyway. Gunther confirms her words, after which he asks how many coins Jonathan has. Jonathan recalls the number he saw in his inventory and reports that his balance now stands at 35,500 coins. Gunther is seriously surprised by this amount and notes that this is a very rare occurrence. After some time, Jonathan heads to the Citadel alone to collect as many valuables as possible. The system reports that the score meets the requirements, and Jonathan confirms his desire to proceed further. Giant doors open before him, and he finds himself in a spacious room where there are many people. He decides to take a walk to find out what he can buy here and what interesting people he can meet. The people here don't pay attention to him, as they are busy trading at the auction. Here you can also find amazing artifacts that provide good damage stats. Jonathan discovers a man who has found something very interesting and asks him what it is. Having received the answer, he looks at the artifact in surprise, noting that the increase is insignificant, and he gets more in the dungeons. The man warns him that he shouldn't show off because anyone can talk nonsense. Jonathan simply shows him his inventory and invites him to verify the truth of his words for himself. The young man admits that he has never seen anything that gives such a significant boost to his mental strength. He apologizes for his curiosity and asks what dungeons Jonathan has completed since he has such high-quality loot. Jonathan puts his hand on his shoulder and explains that for his safety, it is better not to know these things. After this, he moves away, thinking that there is nothing interesting on the first floor. After some time, he decides to go up to another floor, which turns out to be much better than the first. Walking past several artifacts, he suddenly becomes interested in a couple of particularly powerful and unusual items. He discovers a skill upgrade and an experience talisman that significantly increases the speed of leveling. The first thing he decides to do is take 5 experience talismans at once in order to level up to the maximum level 20. Suddenly he stops, trying to figure out what will happen on the 3rd floor if decent artifacts are already being sold there. After some thought, he decides to save money and take only 1 talisman to save money. After this, he approaches the next staircase to climb to the 3rd floor of the Curious Citadel. The students nearby watch in amazement, not believing that the first-year student has risen so high. One of them remarks that this is the first time in 3 years that he has seen anyone go up there. assuming that it is the son of someone influential. The poorer students assume that it is simply the principal's son who has too much money. Clifford suddenly sneezes because someone said something unkind to him. Clifford looks around and assumes he caught a cold from sitting on the cold surface for so long. Jonathan, meanwhile, finds himself on the third floor of the abode and can't tear himself away from the display cases, looking at them carefully. He notices that the prices here are incredibly high, with one suit of armor costing 10,000 coins. Tearing himself away from the armor, he decides to look at other objects. After some time, he discovers another experience talisman, which gives a much larger bonus. Jonathan carefully examines the system notifications and realizes that for this price, he can get a lot of levels. However, the price of these talismans still hits his budget hard, so he decides not to buy too many. After spending the funds as efficiently as possible, only 500 coins remain on the balance, but it can be used to gain even more experience. After some time, he goes to a small forest to try out his new acquisitions. Holding a small scroll in his hands, he realizes that now is the time to level up his summoning skill. The system notifies him that the summoning skill has reached level 4 and new options are now available. He also gets the opportunity to summon another new beast, which will definitely come in handy. Jonathan is incredibly curious about what will appear this time. With his group moving forward, he uses the scroll to cast the spell and bring it to life. A giant red whirlpool appears in front of him, signaling the approach of a new creature. Jonathan realizes he's never seen a hurricane like this, which means something incredibly cool is about to happen. A giant portal opens from which another giant paw emerges. This time, he actually has a real legendary beast under his control, one that almost everyone knows. Jonathan is shocked, looks at the summoned beast and realizes that it is the real King Tao Wu. The combined suppression values of all characteristics of this monster exceed all possible expectations. Jonathan raises his hand to claim the beast for his collection and subjugate its will. After this, he understands that he needs to level up the beast as quickly as possible in order to get the most out of it. The next day, he goes to the training hall to choose the most difficult dungeon for himself. He is offered to go to the Valley of Poisonous Snakes, and he goes there without hesitation. He warns that it's a mid-level 22 dungeon, but Jonathan thinks it's the most suitable for him. After this, he materializes a portal in front of him and boldly steps into it towards the unknown. A few seconds later, he finds himself in the middle of a mysterious desert full of dangers. Jonathan, however, does not give up and immediately uses the small talisman of experience. As soon as he uses this item, clouds begin to gather around him and huge snakes appear from the sky. Jonathan realizes that these are just visual effects and calls his beasts forward. Shintian and his comrades gain slightly less experience thanks to the new booster. Jonathan is happy that after activating the experience booster, he now has a lot more experience, and now leveling up will be easier. Tao Wu levels up almost instantly. However, the joy quickly turns to anxiety as a giant lizard-like snake appears before them. Jonathan activates the analysis skill to scan the creature and determine its characteristics. As he approaches it, he realizes that the creature's characteristics correspond to the 16th level of Calamity. After this, he decides to send Tao Wu ahead to test what the snake is capable of. Tao Wu demonstrates why he is considered the king of the beasts and immediately grabs his prey with his razor-sharp teeth. Moments later, he lands on the ground, and the giant snake suffers multiple wounds. Jonathan is surprised that his newly summoned beast dealt with such a powerful opponent on its own. This just proves that if you give the beast enough time to level up, its damage increases through the roof. Meanwhile, the level 22nd king snake is defeated, and Jonathan receives a lot of experience and rewards. With the experience he gained, he finally reaches level 17, making a significant breakthrough. He also receives epic gear, including a bloody dagger. He makes a few swings, testing the speed and power of the weapon, and is satisfied. In his opinion, this is the best weapon he has ever received in this world. After thinking about it, he hides it in his inventory, and the system invites him to enter the Blazing Sun dungeon. Jonathan remembers being told there was something cool there and decides to accept the system's offer. A moment later, he is informed that there will be stronger monsters in the dungeon, but he continues on regardless. This proves to be a serious test, as something very fast comes rushing towards him and knocks him down. Jonathan quickly tumbles and stabilizes himself, then wonders what that was all about. Activating the analysis skill, he discovers that a giant creature is flying in the air. The system reports that in front of him is a great serpent with incredible agility and speed. In addition, the snake's followers come running here. but Jonathan uses the skill of the single fog. The giant creatures manage to react, but almost instantly find themselves trapped in ice. Xingtian and Tao Wu rush forward to seize the opportunity. Suddenly, the snakes begin to move, despite the control effect not yet wearing off, and attack Jonathan. A moment later, the dragon deals with them, and Jonathan praises the flying lizards for their speed of reaction. Immediately after this, he orders his comrades to take care of the boss, who has clearly been waiting for them. The boss keeps summoning minions to make the fight less difficult. Jonathan notes that there are a lot of guards here, which means he is definitely behind them. Xintan suggests trying to satisfy his insatiable thirst for blood by cutting down his opponents one by one. Some snakes make counterattacks, but this is all doomed to failure against such a warrior. Jonathan is surprised that one of the snakes was able to attack, despite Xintan's incredible strength. The system shows that this snake has tremendous resistance to physical damage and great endurance. However, in order to break through the defense of such a creature, you can use mental damage skills such as Soul Rip. Having dealt with this enemy, Jonathan is glad that he was able to help his comrade in battle. Smiling, he declares that without him, his comrades would still be out of their element. After 20 minutes, he reaches the boss, which is a strange-looking flower. Jonathan boldly calls the boss out of his hole to finally test his powers on him. The flower begins to move, after which a powerful energy clot shoots into the sky, forming into the body of the beast. This beast turns out to be a rather large snake, which, despite its bulkiness, can also fly. Jonathan decides to analyze who is in front of him, and the system tells him that he is facing a demonic king snake. Jonathan learns that this creature can impose 20 negative effects on him and kill him instantly. Jonathan understands that this cannot be allowed to happen and inflicts a soul rupture effect. Of course, it hits the enemy, causing his plans to be immediately disrupted and a series of negative effects to take hold. Jonathan realizes that despite this, the damage done to the creature is extremely meager. However, he quickly gets an idea and summons the Sunset Dragon to attack with fire. The snake creates a powerful energy barrier and thus manages to avoid damage. Jonathan realizes that things won't go on like this and immediately changes tactics. Turning to his golden toad, he commands it to use the enhancement skill. The toad irreplaceably carries out all his commands, and the protagonist's animals receive significant buffs along with this. Immediately after this, they attack the boss with all their forces at once, which leads to a stunning result. Jonathan realizes it's time for another acrobatic maneuver and calls the dragon to him. He jumps on its head to gain the opportunity to jump on top of the giant snake. The angry boss, on the verge of despair, tries to throw Jonathan off, but in vain. Once he reaches the desired scale, he uses the Ice Mist skill to avoid missing. After some time, he finds the beast's weak spot, realizing that this is where its heart is located. Taking the acquired blade, he sets it on fire with his skills and prepares to deliver a powerful blow. The beast takes fatal damage to its weak spot and begins to rush from side to side, but eventually calms down. His skin becomes coated with acidic waste, signaling that it is best not to approach him. Jonathan is fully restored to health and receives 3 evolution stones as a reward for defeating the boss. Jonathan decides to level up Fei, the golden toad, as well as the recently summoned Tao Wu. All 3 beasts receive significant bonuses to their stats and new abilities. Jonathan is delighted with what he has been able to achieve thanks to his phenomenal talents. After this, he orders his beasts to follow him so that they can destroy several more aspects. After some time, the scene again moves to the Hall of Spatial Rifts. Jonathan is very tired from clearing the dungeon, but he receives a message that someone is waiting for him in the park. He wonders who this mysterious person is who set up the meeting. Jonathan claims he knows nothing and was only told that there was important business for him. He thanks for the prompt transmission of information and states that he will now go to the meeting. Waiting until he was alone, the young man took out his phone and called an unknown number, saying that he had to get ready. The action moves to Fantasy Park, where a meeting with a mysterious man has been arranged. Jonathan looks around cautiously, trying to determine who might have come here. Suddenly, a mysterious figure with a knife appears in front of him, trying to attack and kill him. Jonathan manages to react in time and turns in the direction of the intended blow. Moments later, a sharp knife plunges into his arm, causing serious muscle damage. Jonathan jumps back and sees Vernon standing in front of him, finally expressing his hatred. Jonathan reveals that he spared Vernon's life twice, but he still dared to attack him. Vernon claims that there is nothing unusual about this, since he's going to die today anyway. Jonathan says he will be interested to see if Vernon has the strength to carry out his sentence. Suddenly, the head of the Tamer's department comes onto the stage and orders everyone to stop immediately. Vernon complains to the elder that it is that same Jonathan who is standing in front of him. His opponent says that he put so much effort into his death, which means that he clearly did not live his life in vain. Jonathan smiles and notes that apparently no one will escape one death today. The head of the department notes that Vernon has plenty of impudence, but it won't last long. Immediately after this, Jonathan turns to his minions, ordering them to summon the beasts. They obey his will, and a large number of serious opponents appear around Jonathan. The head of the department says that if the puppy kneels and gets full, he will give him an easy death. Vernon states that otherwise he will have to suffer for an incredible amount of time. Jonathan notes that such things do not interest him and decides to call upon his faithful animals. Only a few moments pass and the arena is illuminated by bright rays as Jonathan steps into it. After that, he asks if they still think they can kill him even if they all attack at once. The head of the department cannot believe his eyes, because 5 legendary beasts are in front of him. However, he states that he is still just level 20 trash, which means he won't be able to do anything against them. He also claims that they have a whole squad of level 30 mutilated aunts, and therefore they will defeat Jonathan. Encouraging his squad, he says that together they will finish off the puppy in no time. Jonathan looks at them without a drop of sympathy and notes that they chose their own fate. Within minutes, all these animals find themselves victims of a cruel fate that they themselves brought upon themselves. The same thing happens to spellcasters who couldn't cope with the situation. Vernon survives, but Jonathan is enraged after another attempt on his life. Vernon falls to his knees and admits that he blindly overlooked his greatness, after which he asks for forgiveness. Jonathan points out that it's too late and Vernon had several chances that he missed. Immediately after this, Jonathan turns to the Sky Dragon and orders it to attack Vernon. The dragon immediately carries out the order, covering Vernon with a huge amount of flame, making it impossible to survive. Jonathan watches what is happening when suddenly something distracts his attention. He turns around and feels a powerful aura approaching him at an incredible speed. Something incomprehensible crashes into his body and throws him several meters away. The blow is so strong that Jonathan loses consciousness with no chance of recovery. Director Clifford and Victor quickly arrive to find out what happened. Victor discovers his nephew, who looks like he has no heartbeat. Victor runs forward to check if his relative can be saved. However, after a few moments, he states the fact that his relative died a terrible death. His rage knows no bounds, and he quickly grabs Jonathan, considering him a little bastard. Jonathan opens his eyes and quickly asks for help, noting that he is under attack. Clifford orders Victor to let Jonathan go because he needs to find out what happened first. Victor claims that everything is already obvious here, and there is nothing to find out, since the criminal's guilt has been proven. He adds that Jonathan broke the Academy's rules by killing the students and deserves to be executed. Jonathan notes that he has too high an opinion of himself since he dealt with a level 30 squad. Clifford agrees that this is a reasonable argument, since these people are the elite of the Academy and cannot be defeated so easily. Clifford looks at Jonathan carefully and asks him to explain everything in as much detail as possible. Jonathan tells the story as he goes, noting that someone invited him to the park for a talk, but when he arrived, he was attacked by a crowd in black. He adds that when things got really bad, Vernon and other people showed up and rushed to his aid. Jonathan reports that they fought to the last drop of blood, like true brave warriors. Victor claims that all this is nonsense, since his nephew would not risk his life for Jonathan. Jonathan states that this is the absolute truth and turns to the director to judge between them. Clifford thinks for a moment, then comes to the obvious conclusion that without witnesses, it will be difficult to decide anything. Victor claims that there is nothing to solve here, since he does not see any traces of the people from Black, which means that this is all a lie. Finally, he declares that someone will pay with his nephew's life and rushes forward, ready to strike. Clifford immediately steps in to defend his favorite student, knocking Victor back with a powerful palm strike. He asks Victor if they really decided to kill his favorite student right in front of him, because this is unacceptable. Victor looks at the director and asks if he really dares to defend his nephew's killer. Clifford declares that Jonathan is his student and no outsiders dare to tell him what to do. Victor picks up the body of his dead nephew and notes that Jonathan was lucky today, but this is not the end. Immediately after this, Jonathan instantly gets away with quick jumps. Jonathan gets to his feet and tries to talk to the director, realizing that he was protected for a reason. Clifford orders him to be silent immediately and tells him that he must follow him. Jonathan asks to be more polite, as he was seriously wounded during the battles. Clifford takes him into the room and tells him that Jonathan must tell what really happened. Jonathan states that if the director insists, he will tell everything as it was, without any embellishment. Some time passes, and Jonathan tells the whole story of how his relationship with Vernon developed. Clifford is very indignant, but Jonathan notes that it was only self-defense and asks for forgiveness. Clifford orders him to leave immediately and states that this cannot be called self-defense. Jonathan explains that he didn't mean to kill them, but he just didn't know they could die from one blow. Clifford states that rules are rules and forbids Jonathan from leaving the academy for a month. Jonathan asks if this is all punishment for what he did. Clifford glances at him a couple of times and asks if Jonathan wanted to be punished more severely. Jonathan claims he didn't mean anything like that and notes that the director's wisdom is limitless. Clifford lets out a menacing sigh, noting that Jonathan has already reached level 20, and it's time to step up to the next level. Jonathan expresses hope to receive incredibly wise and high-quality advice from the director. Clifford suddenly asks if Jonathan has any knowledge of other dimensions. Jonathan reports that for a long time he considered this to be just another myth. Clifford claims that this is a special space outside their world where people fight foggy disasters. Jonathan looks at the director in surprise and asks if they are really going to send him to this dimension. Clifford confirms his fears and explains that he would like Jonathan to undergo the mythical evolution. Jonathan looks at it carefully and asks what the hell it is. Clifford explains that the Tamer Academy is divided into 5 levels, from normal to mythical. The most difficult is the mythical evolution, but the increase in characteristics upon success will be maximum. He adds that usually everyone thinks that at the 100th level, after 4 evolutions, the limit comes. But above that, there is also the divine rank. Clifford states that only by going through all 4 evolutions at the mythic level can one achieve a breakthrough. According to the director, Jonathan's strength has exceeded all expectations this month, so he wants to make him a unique fighter. Jonathan notes that he has always been prepared for this challenge since the day he was born, when he came into this world. Clifford commends his determination and informs him that Jonathan must undergo an evolution that will stay with him for a long time. Jonathan receives system notifications, thinking that he has seen this somewhere before. To check, he opens his inventory and discovers that he already has all the necessary items. Clifford states that there will be no difficulties with resources for evolution, but combat merits are required. Jonathan looks at the director in surprise and asks if he really has to go to war for this. Clifford notes that Jonathan is still too weak for such tasks. Jonathan starts to get bored and asks what he needs to do to earn combat merit. Clifford explains that the easiest way would be to enter another dimension and destroy the monsters living there. Jonathan is determined and notes that in this case there is not a single minute to lose. Clifford asks where he is in such a hurry and adds that it is not a walk in the park and talent from all over the world is flocking there. Clifford says that old Mo will take Jonathan there tomorrow morning, and Jonathan agrees to this arrangement. The next day, Jonathan leaves his dorm, ready for new adventures and deadly dangers. Mo comes to the academy to meet Jonathan, whom he hasn't seen for several weeks. Mo notes that he didn't expect anyone to reach level 20 in such a short time. Jonathan states that this time limit, level 20, is the necessary minimum, so he is very ashamed that he could not do more. Mo smiles and notes that Jonathan's self-confidence hasn't gone anywhere, and he even likes it. After this, Mo puts his hand on Jonathan's shoulder, and they instantly disappear in the rays of light. All this time, they are being watched by Director Clifford and Wendy, who are talking tensely. Clifford asks his interlocutor if she thinks this is too risky a step. He adds that the monsters in those places are much more dangerous than in ordinary dungeons, and other countries are not asleep. Wendy states that she has been secretly following Jonathan for a month, and his potential is beyond common sense. She also says that if all the divine and expressive beasts appeared in their country, then it would be him. Meanwhile, the action moves to the border of the Dragon Empire, where a military base is located. Jonathan asks Mo if the forbidden foggy zone that can't be entered without preparation is right here. Mo confirms his fears and notes that the monsters are acting more aggressively and the fog is spreading faster and faster. Mo explains that when Jonathan was clearing out the cannibal dungeon, the disaster there suddenly intensified. Jonathan notes that the director believes it is due to the fog, which is spreading incredibly quickly. Mo declares that this is just the beginning, because soon everything in the Dragon Empire will change in the most radical way. After this, they move on and descend lower and lower, ending up in a tent near one of the soldiers. Mo turns to a commander named Martin and reports that, as ordered, he has brought Jonathan there. Jonathan looks at the commander in surprise and realizes that in front of him stands the same legendary dragon warrior. Martin looks at the boy and asks if this is really the warrior they talk about so much. Jonathan bows before him and says that he wants to greet the legendary commander. Martin smiles and explains that it is not easy to get into another dimension and that its strength must first be tested. Jonathan says there is no problem with that and asks how the verification will be carried out. Martin says that to do this he needs to see Jonathan's stats window, and that's it. Jonathan asks in surprise if this is too serious, since he was strictly ordered not to show his characteristics. Martin clarifies who exactly ordered him not to disclose his characteristics. Jonathan explains that Master Clifford ordered it, and his word means a lot. Martin is surprised by what he hears and says that in that case you need to obey his order. After this, they leave the tent and the general orders Jonathan to follow him to get a briefing. They quickly find themselves in a special room where a small gadget is located. The general orders to hit the gadget with all his might and use all available means. He adds that this test can only be passed by dealing 10,000 damage or more. Martin emphasizes that the requirements for entering the other dimension are very strict, and weaklings are strictly forbidden from entering. Jonathan turns to Mo and tells him not to worry about it because he can definitely handle it. Jonathan adds that in this case he will give it his all and will not hold back for a single second. Coming closer, he decides to use the Soul Rip skill and gains 36,400 points. Martin notes that this is the first time he has seen a strike result greater than 30,000, as this is simply impossible. Coming closer to the piece of iron, Jonathan starts kicking it and says that the damn piece of iron is broken. Jonathan asks if the testing machine could possibly break down in this situation. Mo explains that there are very few people in the Dragon Empire who can enter another dimension, and the device has not been used for a long time. Martin turns to his assistants and orders them to fix it immediately. Several soldiers enter the room and announce that the order will be carried out immediately. After this, the soldiers carefully inspect the sensors, shaking off all the dust from them to return them to normal condition. Martin turns to Jonathan and asks him to wait a little, saying that everything will be ready soon. After some time, a soldier approaches him, informing him that the device is working properly. Martin reports that now that the device has been repaired, testing needs to continue. The soldiers adjust the device and note that it was originally in good working order and had never even broken. Martin looks at them in surprise and asks if the machine really gave the true values. The employee replies that they have triple-checked the device's performance and confirmed that it fully complies with normal standards. Martin can't believe Jonathan actually dealt around 40,000 damage in just one hit. Jonathan explains that he has high damage output and abilities that allow him to ignore defenses. Martin understands that the boy is clearly underestimating his abilities, because even taming level 30 beasts doesn't do that much damage. After this, he states that Jonathan passed the first tests with flying colors, but now his animals need to be evaluated. Jonathan wonders if his animals should interact with the device too. Martin immediately clarifies that the device does not make exceptions, so the assessment will be carried out for everyone. He adds that the animal must stand on the sensor for the device to calculate its 5 basic parameters. He also clarifies that if 3 animals score a total of 100,000 points, the test will be considered passed. Jonathan says that he understands the conditions of the test perfectly and will pass it with ease. Even though the system seems complicated to him, he decides to use Xingtian first. Without thinking twice, he raises his hand and declares that he wishes to see his grand beast before him. A few moments later, Xintan appears next to him, as if searching for the necessary target. Martin is surprised by such a giant monster and wonders where its head went. Jonathan explains that the monster's name is Xinxian and it simply has no head. Martin resolves such issues and orders the creature to stand on the sensor. Once the creature has completed the command, Martin looks at the stats and asks if it is indeed level 20. Mo claims that there is no doubt, since Jonathan has not yet gone through the first evolution. Jonathan states that even one animal is enough to exceed the limit, so there is little point in continuing. Martin is still annoyed and points out that this doesn't mean the rest of the numbers will be the same. Jonathan realizes he'll have to waste a little more time and summons a dragon turtle. The turtle instantly jumps out of the energy space, looking around. Martin asks why Jonathan decided to choose this particular animal. Jonathan asks if there are any problems with his choice. Martin notes that this is a support beast and its combat power is not its primary stat. Jonathan says there's no need to worry and suggests checking the turtle's stats. Martin waves his hand and notes that he has nothing against such a decision. The turtle carefully crawls onto the pedestal and patiently waits to be called back. After some time, the sensors show a result above 160,000, which greatly surprises Martin. Mo says you can get used to it, but at first he reacted to things like that too. Martin still wants to see one more animal jump on the sensor. Jonathan thinks that it would be better to hold back the rest of the animals, otherwise the master might not be able to bear it. As his final animal, he chooses a golden toad, which also surprises Martin with its performance. The toad immediately sits on the sensor and looks closely at its owner. Her numbers are in the hundreds of thousands, and Jonathan wonders if that's enough. Martin clears his throat loudly and declares that he has no objections. Mo asks Jonathan why he didn't summon the sunset dragons he possesses. Jonathan explains that he was afraid that the device would break, so he decided to summon only the weakest animals. Martin can't believe that the beasts he just saw were the weakest in Jonathan's arsenal. Jonathan says he has 3 more beasts, much stronger than the one he just demonstrated. Martin still advises to act with caution after he gets to another dimension, as it is dangerous there. Jonathan thanks him for his caution, stating that he will only act within reason. After a while, they exit the hangar and a giant portal appears in front of them. Jonathan walks forward calmly, completely unconcerned about what awaits him inside. Martin notes that it looks like the Dragon Empire will soon be able to cope. Jonathan continues his journey, finding himself in a rather hostile environment. Jonathan, surprised, looks around and recognizes in their scenery the city of the Black Dragon. Further on, he sees a large number of traders who sell headlights at a fairly low price. Jonathan realizes that it looks like he is in the real world. People suddenly start looking at him with suspicion and say that they rarely see a person from the Dragon Empire. These traders don't take it seriously because they don't understand how anyone can get in here at level 20. Some of them even start threatening him, saying that the weakest monsters here are at least level 23. They immediately start betting on how quickly he will die, and every prediction they make turns out to be quite disappointing. Jonathan continues to move on, of course, ignoring these empty accusations and warnings. When he reaches the map, he discovers that there is fog in the area, and the thicker it is, the more dangerous the place is. However, all of these are just empty threats for the main character, who has many useful gadgets. He understands that all that remains for evolution to find is the heart of the Davidic serpent and the tears of the mermaid. The first thing he decides to do is look for fish, and after a while he finds himself in a grove filled with fog. Looking around, he feels his address begin to exceed the maximum marks. After some time, a strange animal emerges from the fog and rushes forward towards the dragon turtle. Jonathan realizes it was an ambush and calls Xingtian to deal with the creatures. Xingtian reaches the victim and delivers a powerful blow with his axe right to the head. However, this is not enough to break the enemy's formation, and he does not receive any damage. Jonathan wonders why the blow stunned the creature but failed to penetrate its shell. Such secrets need to be dealt with immediately, so he decides to conduct an analysis of the enemy. The system notifies him that this enemy does not take physical damage, so he summons Poison Master Fei. The Poison Master, of course, decides to go all out and creates a huge amount of poison. Level 23. Crystal beetles are instantly defeated, but Jonathan does not gain experience. Jonathan understands that this is not the most important thing now, because he is receiving the combat merits necessary for evolution. He only gets 1 combat merit, meaning he'll have to kill 50,000 monsters to level up. Suddenly, a large number of spellcasters appear in front of him, reporting that the abyssal monster has almost caught up with them. Jonathan turns around in their direction in surprise, trying to understand what is happening here and how he ended up here. One of the spellcasters suddenly falls to the ground because he didn't notice a snag and tripped over it. Next, they are followed by a truly terrifying monster, which is a giant skull. This skull belongs to a necromancer who has 2 heads and great knowledge in reviving the dead. The fighters scatter, saying that they need to call the Black Dragon's guard as soon as possible. Jonathan doesn't decide to run away and understands that he can deal with this enemy without any problems. First, he decides to analyze the Shadow Wanderer and realizes that it is immune to elemental damage. He understands that this means that the Poison Master here will be completely useless. However, this does not apply to his other creatures, which on the contrary, deal physical damage. Jonathan quickly issues commands, ordering the toad to inspire allies, Tao Wu to intimidate and suppress the enemy, and the dragon to be used as an offensive weapon. Toad, as the most important member of the squad, immediately begins to carry out his duties. The rest of the protagonist's beasts immediately rush forward to destroy this pathetic wanderer, leaving him no chance. The wanderer dies quite quickly, his health drops, he loses serious bonuses and as many as 5 combat merit points. Jonathan understands that this is the main purpose of being here, because he needs to defeat stronger opponents. The Black Dragon Guardians come to the rescue and ask where the abyssal monster they were talking about is. They are told that the monster is ahead, but they only come across its corpse. The astonished hunters cannot understand how this creature died and who killed it. One of them asks a question, wondering if someone strong enough has really been here. People here report that when they were running away, there was a guy here. His comrade declares that this is not a joke, because all the people from the Dragon Empire are weaklings, the likes of which are hard to find. They also note that when the fog swallows the Empire, its territory will pass to the Old Kingdom. The Guardians of Dragonia say that if the monster is destroyed, they should go into the dungeon and not talk. Meanwhile, Jonathan comes to the water world, where a large number of people are looking for help. One of the girls immediately approaches him and asks if he would like to join their company. Jonathan, as usual, passes by her, saying that he feels better when he walks alone. They follow him and shout at him, calling him disturbing and adding that they will still see which of them will be cooler. The girl watching the scene reports that the entrance to the dungeon has just flashed a bright red color. They don't understand that this means the kid has chosen the nightmare difficulty, which they think means he's gone crazy. Jonathan ignores their warnings and immediately sets out forward, towards the greatest danger. He immediately analyzes everything in front of him to gain information about the monsters. He understands that they have quite high agility, and if they move in a crowd, he will have to be careful. However, he has amazing skills that allow him to limit the mobility of these monsters. Smiling sincerely, he steps forward and uses the skill Ice Mist, targeting a large area. All these pathetic fish do not manage to escape the affected area in time and are destroyed. Jonathan immediately summons his main beasts and orders them to deal with the easy prey. They deal multiple hits to their opponents, despite them not taking much damage. The dragon begins a competition with Xingtian, and they try to destroy as many enemies as possible. Jonathan notes that such farming missions bring him more combat merit. Continuing to patrol the underwater world, he orders his beasts to patrol the area and destroy all enemies. Thus, he cleared several very important places and continues hunting for fish. Finding himself near a giant shell, he assumes that the dungeon boss must be somewhere here. Approaching the place where the boss appears, he hopes that in life she will be as beautiful as described in fairy tales. Shinchan leaps forward and delivers a powerful axe attack to the shell, causing it to open. Jonathan notes that he could have acted more carefully. After a while, the silhouette of a beautiful goddess appears, and Jonathan realizes that she is truly beautiful. However, when the soap suds dissipate, he discovers that she is not nearly as sweet as he imagined. Having grabbed one of the animals, he immediately begins to feel a feeling of disgust. Turning away, Jonathan says that after this he will never again believe in tales of beautiful mermaids. The Siren Queen is clearly offended by such an attitude from a man who clearly did not come here to sing serenades. However, she decides to go for her usual action and starts singing a song to destroy him. Jonathan covers his ears with difficulty before shooting a soul rip at her. The attack hits its target and she immediately grabs her head, stopping singing. Jonathan realizes that this is the perfect moment to order his beasts to attack. The mermaid tries to fight back with several energy balls, but it turns out to be a waste of time. The animals easily dodge all flying projectiles and do not experience any particular problems. After some time, they enter into a duel, but the outcome of the battle has already been decided. Xingtian quickly closes the distance and defeats the Mermaid Queen, earning Jonathan a large amount of combat merit. Jonathan is glad that the items needed for evolution dropped on the first try. After thinking for a bit, he realizes that he has earned a total of 480 combat merit points. If we continue to act at the same pace, then there are only a few days left for the biometric evolution. Meanwhile, the Sakura group reports that they have finally reached this place. Finding themselves behind the protagonist, they point at him and inform him that he has already killed the boss. The leader is angry because the man from the Dragon Empire has once again ruined his money and good farming opportunities. Coming closer to him, he orders that all the loot be immediately laid out, otherwise he will not stand on ceremony. Jonathan, with his head held high, notes that the scum of the kingdom remain pathetic moral monsters wherever they go. The villain immediately summons his monster in the form of a giant crab, saying that it asked for it. He commands all his minions to use their ultimate abilities to deal massive damage to Jonathan. However, the main character stands as if nothing has happened, not even feigning fear, since he understands perfectly well that he will win. A few moments later, a large amount of sea foam appears on the spot where he had just stood. One of the Sakura gang's bandits reports that this is exactly what happens when people go against him. However, gradually the sea foam clears, and it becomes clear that Jonathan is completely fine. This leaves them perplexed and wondering why Jonathan is still alive despite all the power being unleashed on him. Jonathan declares that they have chosen their own destiny and calls all of his animals to his side at once.